does the research tell us now about the risk for air passengers contracting COVID-19 on commercial flights?
Yeah, so there's been very few reports, extremely rare reports actually, of transmission aboard aircrafts. And I think we are learning more and more about some of the technologies, if you like, in terms of the ventilation and the way that aircraft ventilations work is actually, the modern aircraft is actually really good in terms of air exchanges and the way that the airflow occurs in the cabin. So there has been a few reports, but actually very, very little. I think we continue to ask provinces to report to us if you've seen reports to actual positive passengers, but have not demonstrated an actual transmission on board the aircraft itself. We have not received that kind of report. But the other thing is that in that setting, there are ways in which you could put in procedures like mask wearing. People are sitting facing the same direction with seat backs, in front of them. So there are a number of reasons, perhaps, as to why we are actually not seeing the actual conveyance itself as being a main area or setting of spread.
There we go. What time is it? It's still morning, people. Good morning. I had to go early. I had to go live a little early because I'm going to talk about the Pat King non-event after David Anber comes on. I was going to go live at noon, start with that same clip, but I think Anber said he was free for 7 to 9 minutes at 11:50. And I said, forget everything else. I'm going to go live early, get Anber on so we can answer a few questions just about how the bail hearing works, the docket procedure. Then I'm going to describe what happened this morning at what was supposed to be the bail hearing or the rehearing or another date for Pat King. I'll get to the standard disclaimers after Anber's in here. He's only here for a very short time, so I'm going to get to Anber right away, and then we're going to carry on with the stream. Dave, how are you doing?
Good. How are you? Let me just make that a little.
Try to fit. Yeah, there you go. That's a little better. Good, man. David, we have a very, very short time, so let's get to the nuts and bolts of this. Do you know what happened this morning with the Pat King hearing?
I have not a clue. I've been immersed in a bunch of cases that are on the go for me this week. So you tell me.
No. Well, nothing happened because they just postponed it another 2 weeks. But I sat there along with resistance cats listening to the docket. I mean, basically, you'll tell me what went down. It sounded like they have their list of court files that are up for the day, but for scheduling or for dispatching to other judges, they went through a docket. I think it had at least 20 different cases on. They said postponed agreement. Which procedurally, how does it work at court?
Which courtroom were you in?
3, I believe.
Okay, that's a bail court. All right.
So I mean, how does it typically work when you have bail hearings, or when you have the what do they call it, the procedural stuff that they deal with in the morning? They hear, what are you here for? How long are you going to need? Do they dispatch you to a judge, or are you supposed to come back to that particular judge?
If the case is in a bail court, particularly courtroom 6 or 3, the idea is that they're supposed to be having a bail hearing. Things get adjourned all the time, but they're in that court to proceed on a bail hearing or some kind of consent release. Typically, that's what's the situation.
And I mean, how many bail hearings can they have in a day? Because there were 20, at least before 11:30, say 17 to 20 cases on the docket. They can't hear that in a day.
Well, there's a heavy presumption in favor of release, and the vast majority of people who get charged by police are released from the police station. And then of those who are not released from the police station, the ones that are brought to bail court, the majority of them, probably 2/3 or 3/4 of those remaining cases that come to the court, are also released on agreement of the parties. So if there's 20 matters on a bail list, some of them will be postponed. But of the ones that aren't being postponed, it's normal that I would say that, let's say there's 15 left, that 10 of those 15 or a dozen of those 15 will be dealt with on consent. That'll leave you like 2 or 3 that might run at the end of the day or later in the day.
And if they don't get heard, they come back the next day or they come back the next week?
Well, there's limitations in terms of how long somebody in custody can be adjourned. The Crown can ask for an adjournment, but they have limitations on that for the purpose of investigation. And if a person is detained longer than they would like to be at this bail stage, it could result in charter relief at a later point in the trial.
It was amazing. Now, listening to it, I was struck by how many publication bans there were on matters before the docket. I don't even know what you're allowed to report on. There still seems to be a publication ban on the Pat King hearing. You know, all that I mentioned is it's postponed for 2 weeks to June. You 13th.
Spoke to me earlier today about that, and I wasn't aware you were referring to a bail court. It's actually, there are different types of publication bans. There are publication bans that are geared mainly towards protecting the identity of the alleged victim. There are publication bans that serve other purposes. And at the bail phase, it's actually quite common, I would even say even more common than not, for there to be a publication ban. The idea is that when a matter comes to trial, particularly if there's going to be a jury trial, in many cases, there's a desire from the Crown or the defense or both that there not be information out there circulating in the media about the actual case, which could prejudice jurors who may or may not be entitled to hear that information, or where the information has not yet been challenged, as is the case at a bail hearing. So there's a publication ban that's typically sought in the bail court. That's different than the type of publication ban that exists at other stages in the proceedings.
But why? I mean, I can understand certain elements. So if there's certain elements that are banned, they'll just refer to it as a publication ban. If you can't mention the name of the certee, so the word publication ban it can mean more or less depending on the case.
Well, I mean, the ban is what the judge or justice states in their order. I mean, I think sometimes it can relate to certain parts of a case. That's up to the parties to decide and the presiding judicial officer to decide. And again, I'm not a big expert on publication bans. I need to go back to the various sections and see the wordings of them to see, what the purpose behind them is, and then you could figure it out. But okay. At the bail stage, it's not unusual to have a publication ban.
Okay, because there were a lot of them. It's not my area of expertise, but it just seemed weird. I mean, if there's publication bans on all of these hearings, or at least certain elements of them, it certainly restricts the public's ability to know what's going on. Dave, do you have any updates in cases that you're involved in that you can share?
Nothing really that interesting at this time. I mean, a lot of my convoy cases are going forward. I'm not going to really comment on those right now. There's some stuff going on behind the scenes, both I think from the prosecution and the defense, and many of these will start to work their way towards pretrial meetings in the next weeks and months to come. But nothing that's of any interest to the viewers that I could talk about, at least not right now. I'm sure I'll be back with some more information though.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much, Dave, and thanks for popping in.
Thanks for having me.
All right, talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let me remove that. So basically, the big news of the day was Pat King, who has been in pretrial detention since February 18th. That is now February to March to April to May. 18th to the 31st is 2 weeks. That's 3.5 months in pretrial detention on mischief charges. Was apparently on the docket today for a bail hearing or a rehearing, and it's a Zoom link. You can open to the public, but you cannot, publication bans on any given trial aside, you cannot reproduce any portion of a court hearing. As far as I understand, I mean, in Canada, I think it's period. In the States, when they're broadcast, obviously you can rebroadcast or comment or share clips. But when they're, despite being open to the public, you can't record in a courtroom. You can't take pictures in a courtroom. You can't audio, whatever. And so the idea being that even when you have access to them through the new technology, Zoom, what are the other ones? Zoom, that other meeting space thing, that you can view them remotely, but you cannot rebroadcast them or take screenshots. You can't do remotely what you would not have otherwise been able to do in person in the courtroom. So there, even though you can access these things, you can't screen grab, rebroadcast, live stream, commentate, as some people discovered during one of the previous, I think it was one of the previous Pat King bail hearings. So Pat King was up for a bail hearing today. You could tune in by Zoom, and everyone should do it. If you can find the link, you should tune in, if not necessarily for Pat King, for anybody, just to understand how the court system actually works, to see it firsthand. Because I never practiced criminal law. It's still interesting to the extent you're dealing with real people who are behind bars, and the human element. It's, it can be nauseating or distressing. But let me see here in the chat. But it's interesting to listen to, because people don't appreciate. Some people say, I like law, but I don't want to study procedure. I'd say like 90% of the practice of law is procedure. Let's just say maybe 80. The majority of the practice of law is procedure. It's not every day that you argue the substance of the law. More often than not, you go to court for scheduling, for strategizing for the purposes of scheduling, for strategizing for the purposes of specific questions that are going to be before the court that day. And it's more procedure than anybody knows. And so you go listen to this, where you think it's going to be a bail hearing. You're going to be arguing the merits of the case for 2 days like you did with Tamara Litch. You get there and you hear what's on the docket. The docket is basically the schedule of the day, the list of the day of the cases before the court. Today, I think Pat King came up third to last. So I think Pat King came up 17th on the docket. They went through 16 separate cases of individuals accused for various reasons. And you see the judge, the clerk, the counsel, the prosecutor, they're trying to figure out which line of the docket a specific case is on, so they can know the names of the parties and the nature of the case. So they go through and say, okay, we're on the parties, Crown versus whomever. What number of the docket it is, so we can see what the nature of the case is, what the state of the proceeding is, because the docket will have all the information of the case up until that date. Some people were arrested over the weekend. Some people have been detained for weeks. Some people can't get in touch with their counsel. A lot of the defendants who don't actually have counsel are self-representing and appearing remotely as well from court. And so you go through, who's this guy? What's he? Okay, what do you want? Well, we're going to postpone 2 weeks so that defense and the Crown can discuss terms of bail. Then you hear some individuals, the actual accused, fighting with their counsel because they're, I don't know what's going on. I've been here all weekend. I can't get in touch with you. Some of them are self-represented, don't understand that they're only there for scheduling or procedural stuff, not substantive stuff. At one point during the bail thing today, one of the defendants started, talking about the substance of his accusations. And the judge like, don't say anything here. What you say can and will be used against you. We're here for scheduling, for procedure. Don't get into the substance of your defense on the substance of the accusations. And so we went through 17 of those cases. You hear stagiaires, interns coming there for court and saying, yes, my name is X and Y. I'm here as an intern or stagiaire from this law firm. We'd like to postpone for yada, yada, yada. So it went on for 9:30 to 11:30. They went through 17 cases, finally got up to Pat King. Pat King, identify yourself, date of birth. And I think it was his counsel that said, we want to postpone 2 weeks so that we can continue discussions with the Crown on pre-trial hearings and bail terms or a bail rehearing. And that's it. You wait there all morning listening to the court. Pat King comes in, 2 minutes, postpone 2 weeks. And now it goes to, I think I tweeted it was June 13th. Let me just make sure that I did that. It was June 13th is going to be, I think it's a pre-trial conference or a bail hearing. I didn't exactly understand. June 14th. And the court mentioned there's a publication ban in Pat King. I don't know what the purpose of the publication ban is, but from my understanding, it was Pat King and the defense that asked for it, not the prosecution. Gin bottle. Viva, I believe everyone should serve out their time pretrial. No bail. What do you say? I don't know if that... everyone should serve out their time pre-trial, no bail. I don't know if that's sarcastic or ironic or parody, because that would violate every presumption of criminal law that we have. It would violate rules of habeas corpus. It would violate rules of innocent until proven guilty. It would violate rules of unlawful detention. So I think that's a joke. And in which case, if it is, well played. Everyone has to appreciate pre-trial detention is detention of an individual who, legally speaking, is innocent. You may think they're guilty. There may be lots of indications that they are in fact guilty, but pre-trial detention is detention in prison, deprivation of life, well, not life, deprivation of liberty of someone who is, legally speaking, innocent. They have not been convicted in a court of law. So if you're going to pre-trial detain someone, or if you're going to detain someone pre-trial, if you're going to violate their most fundamental civil rights and liberties, you need to have the bestest of the excuses to do so. And those excuses, as fleshed out in case law and in our legal system, flight risk, because if you think someone's going to flee and they're not going to show up for their trial, and you have to have compelling evidence for that, that's a reason to deprive them of their constitutional rights of life, freedom, and mobility. Extreme risk to the public. You take an individual, hypothetically, an individual who runs over 4 protesters with his or her vehicle. The risk that an individual like that might pose to society at large, if released, could be substantial enough that in the minds of some, you could argue for pretrial detention. Because if you release them, they are going to pose an immediate risk to either the victim, either some witnesses, or the public at large. And even then, it's got to be compelling. There was another issue. There was one, recidivism, risk to the public. Oh, and there's a concept called impugning. It is called impugning the administration of justice, or it's basically undermining. Would releasing the individual compromise the integrity of the judicial system in the eyes of the public? Some people are accused of such heinous crimes. There's an orgy of evidence upon their arrest that if you release them, it would undermine people's confidence in the judicial system. This, incidentally, is the argument that one of the previous justices of the peace used to justify the pretrial detention of Pat King. Listen to this twisted Kafkaesque carriage in front of the horse logic. The officer of the peace in Pat King's bail hearings, the ones that have resulted in him being detained now for 3.5 months. Same logic actually with Tamara Litch as well. The initial officer of the peace, or justice of the peace, who ordered the pretrial detention of Pat King, who's accused of mischief-related charges, said this man orchestrated a protest, not an insurrection, but an occupation, encouraged people to participate in this illegal protest. Says the second I get out, I'm going to go back and tell people to go protest. To release him would, someone's got to get the word for me. I'm going to go crazy. Would impugn the administration of justice. To release him would undermine the public's faith in the legal system. Hence, we're going to lock up in pretrial detention a man who is legally innocent on charges of effective mischief-related charges. And when I say that is Kafkaesque, Orwellian, carriage in front of the horse, I don't think most people would say continuing to detain this individual who was arrested on non-violent mischief charges I'm not convinced that most people would say, if you release this person, I will lose faith in the judicial system. I think it's the exact other way around. I'm losing faith in the judicial system by continuing to witness the continued pretrial detention of someone who I don't think is an immediate threat to anybody. He might have caused some mischief. I don't think he's an immediate threat to anybody. I don't think he's a flight risk either. And there are ways to mitigate flight risks such that even the release could curtail the risk that he's going to hop on a plane, which I don't think he's going to do for, logistical reasons, policy reasons in Canada. I don't think this dude's hopping on a train or a plane to fly to a country that does not have extradition for mischief charges. There are ways to mitigate that. But my personal opinion as a lawyer, although the only opinion that matters is that of the judge, It would not be the release of this individual that would undermine people's faith in the judicial system. It's the continued pretrial detention of Pat King, who is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law on mischief charges. That is undermining my faith in the judicial system more than the release and more than anything that occurred in the 3 weeks of that Ottawa protest. That is what is undermining my faith in the Canadian judicial system in a meaningful, substantial, and I might even say permanent way. Okay. Let's get to some super chats and some disclaimers. Chet Chisholm says, please go through Bill C-21. It's insane. It makes illegal airsoft. Hold on. I believe I did a video on that. I'm fairly certain I did. Viva Fry order in council. Firearms. I know I broke down that lawsuit way back in the day. My problem is I can't even remember the name of the videos. Viva Fry. Here we go. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, no, I covered this a while back. Video did pretty well. 261,000. I don't know. At the time I knew less than I do now because I think. Actually, I don't remember if at the time of doing that video I had taken the firearm safety course. I'm not the biggest connoisseur of firearm, everything. So here, hold on. Let me post this right here. Boom. I believe I'm a bad dude. Corn Pop is in the house again. Thank you, Corn Pop. And then there was one more that I had flagged that I'm missing. Viva. BNS apologized for freezing trucker accounts. Yeah, your apologies. Thanks. You know what? Apologizing for having done the wrong thing on purpose, I'll take it because it's better than nothing. But I would have appreciated, more important than an apology would have been integrity from day one. Let them apologize. I'd rather they get sued and held responsible for their damages. Okay. So, by the way, super chats. YouTube takes 30%. If you don't like that, we're simultaneously streaming on Rumbles, I believe. Rumble has a thing called Rumble Rants, which they take 20%. So better for the creator, better to support a platform that you demonetized already on YouTube. Request a review because you guys are just makes no sense. Rumble is you'll feel better supporting a better platform that supports free speech, and more goes to the creator. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com is another place where you can support Barnes and myself if you're so inclined. There's a thing called Super Thanks, which is like Rumble Rants after our live stream has ended. Haven't yet received one, but I don't know how it works. But there's a way to do a super chat after the stream is over, and it's by way of Super Thanks, and you'll notice a little icon in the stream afterwards. Okay, with that said, people, that was the intro. We're going to get back to Dr. Theresa Tam in a second. On the menu for today, Canada is making international headlines. International headlines. We were in Fox News. Now, they didn't go with the OH, Canada, exclamation point. They went with Whoa, Canada. And that is because of a new proposed firearm ban that is coming into the works in Canada under Supreme Leader Justin Trudeau, who is so starved for tragedy and crises that he has to go to other countries to get them, to import those crises into our country so that he can then enact legislation in the face of tragedies and atrocities that occur in other countries that, at the very least, under current firearm laws in Canada, could not possibly happen. And we're going to get into it because it's so patently transparent what is going on in the chasing windmills of tragedy internationally to enact national policy that is totally unrelated to the imported national tragedy that Justin Trudeau. He is a man in search of tragedy and crises to exploit politically, because it's the only way he avoids the scrutiny of the public and the media. Keep the subsidized media totally distracted on shiny other atrocities and tragedies that this guy imports or creates nationally. And by create nationally, I am talking about the Ottawa protest. distract the media, distract the people so that nobody looks at Justin Trudeau. Arguably, in my memory, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, the most corrupt, the most unethical regime Canada has ever seen. That rhymes, sort of. So we're going to go over that. Going to go over Theresa Tam, talking science, because she's the chief doctor of Canada. Shut up, Colin P. Sussmann not guilty. I don't know if this is true. Hold on. Sussmann, if this is true and I just told you to shut up, I apologize. Thank you for the super chat. If this is not true, I don't want to be accused of spreading rumors. You know, there's the old the meme, you know, in the chat, rest in peace, Tony Danza, whatever. And then I always thought it was a meme. And then lo and behold, someone said, rest in peace. Someone says, rest in peace, Betty White. And I was like, stop trolling. And then it turns out, oh my goodness. It's true. It's true. Well, added to the menu, Michael Sussmann found not guilty. Dead to rights is how Barnes described it. Dead to rights is how any lawyer with half a brain would describe it. Found not guilty. Let's just do that right now, while we're waiting for the verdict in Johnny Depp. There will be no Johnny Depp chatter, banter, killing of time until the verdict is in. But if the Johnny Depp verdict comes in, we'll be watching that live. 1 o'clock, people. Jim Karahalios, the New Blue Party, is coming on. I don't endorse political candidates and tell anybody who to vote for. Politics is something like religion. It's very personal. I don't try to sell my version of God on anybody else. And in politics, it's not much different. You know, political leaders are a form of a lowercase g God. I don't tell people who to vote for, even when I'm running for office. But I know who I would vote for, which is irrelevant because that's my choice to believe in. Jim Karahalios is coming on now. I think the Ontario provincial elections are, if not tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. And Jim, I want to hear what he has to say. I want to hear what the heck is going on in Ontario. And we're going to talk. 1 o'clock, Jim Karahalios. But before we get to Jim Karahalios, Michael Sussmann, in a totally not Sussmann verdict, not freaking guilty, unfreaking believable. This is news to my eyes. We're going to read it together. And I'm sorry, chat. Let me just see what's going on in the chat. Can we believe this? Can we believe this? No, it's true now. It's true now. No, now it's the system works according to some. 2 screens. The heck is my problem? 1 screen, 2 films. Michael Sussmann went to trial. He had the audacity, the bald-faced audacity to go to trial on charges of having lied to the FBI because he sat down with the FBI. Allegedly, I guess he's innocent now. I have to change my whole orientation of Michael Sussmann. He allegedly sat down with the FBI to communicate to the FBI, allegedly, a white paper, the dossier on which he was working. One of the 3 white papers on which he was working about Donald Trump and the Trump campaign. The most fantastical research, the most fantastical PP dossier that anybody could imagine. So outlandish. Apparently, the FBI said it looked like it was drafted by someone out of a mental institution. And I'm not saying that to make jokes about that. That's apparently how the FBI described it. Said it was so outlandish, no one could believe this. Michael Sussmann is an IT specialist lawyer who brought this to the FBI and says, look at this, you should really go investigate Trump. And the FBI asked him, knowing damn well who Sussmann is, was, and will continue to be, presumably. They knew Sussmann was Hillary Clinton and the Clinton campaign's lawyer. They knew that he was an IT specialist attorney because he was involved with the FBI when they were investigating the DNC, the alleged Russian hack into the DNC servers. The FBI knew who Sussmann was. Sussmann goes to meet with the FBI and says, look what I got here. I got an interesting dossier, an interesting file about Donald Trump. you really should look into it and go investigate Donald Trump and the Trump campaign, because there are these back-end servers at the Trump campaign, at the Trump headquarters, that show that he's working with the Russians to interfere with the elections and influence the outcome of the elections. He went and did this despite what is now evidence, or what was evidence of him having billed to prepare these documents, these dossiers, these white papers. He paid to prepare them as per his billing. He billed the Clinton campaign, Hillary Clinton, to prepare these documents. He billed the Clinton campaign to sit down with the FBI, to disclose them to the FBI, to say, look how serious this is. You'd better go investigate Trump. When the FBI, knowing who Sussmann was, asked, are you here for a client or are you here as a concerned citizen? He said, I'm not here representing any client. I'm here as a concerned citizen. He then went back and billed the Clinton campaign for his meeting with the FBI. And he faced one charge of lying to the FBI, providing a materially false statement to the FBI in the context of an investigation, refused to plead, like Kleinsmith, the lawyer for the FBI who falsified evidence to submit to a secret FISA court to obtain a renewal of a FISA warrant on Carter Page, which they then used to not dovestep or whatever, jump step into spying on the Trump campaign itself. Kleinsmith pleaded guilty to falsifying evidence, then submitting it to the FISA court to obtain a renewal of a FISA warrant. He pleaded guilty, got a slap on the wrist, 1 year suspended, 1 year probation, retroactive to the date of the infraction. So he served no time. He was temporarily disbarred, apparently readmitted to the bar. And Sussmann, I guess, maybe learned the wrong lesson, or, knew something most people didn't. He didn't even plead guilty. He went to trial, despite being dead to rights by anyone's account, acquitted. Michael Sussmann found not guilty of charges brought by the special prosecutor John Durham. Washington, D.C. And they deliberated for 1 day. The trial closing arguments ended Friday. It was Memorial Day weekend. The verdict is in. It's Tuesday. It was Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon. The jury found Michael Sussmann not guilty of making a false statement to the FBI on September 2016, when he said he was not working on behalf of any client when he brought information alleging a covert communications channel between the Trump organization and Russia's Alpha Bank. After the 2-week trial and more than a day of more than a day of deliberations, the jury found that special counsel John Durham's team had not proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Sussmann's statement was a lie, and that he was in fact working on behalf of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign and technology executive Rodney Joffe when he brought 2 thumb drives and a white paper alleging Trump-Russia connection. You know what the amazing thing is? It's not even if he billed and paid, even if he billed the Clinton campaign for that meeting, it's not clear that it was a lie, because he might have also been there as a concerned citizen. He might not have been there only, or he might not have, for that moment, that 1 second, he wasn't there for Clinton campaign. He was there for himself. They didn't believe they proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. He had billing to show that he prepared those documents. He had billing to show that he billed the campaign and Hillary Clinton for the meeting with the FBI in which he disclosed it. Robbie Mook, the campaign manager for the Clinton 2016 campaign, confirmed as a witness for the defense, by the way. It's not like he was a witness for the prosecution. He was Sussmann's defense witness, confirmed that Hillary Clinton herself personally okayed communicating the white paper that was billed to the Clinton campaign for the preparation of to the FBI. They failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury included one federal. The jury we talked about this multiple times. Listen to who was on the jury. People who voted Clinton, donated to AOC, had worked in federal government. Listen to this. The jury included one federal government employee who told the judge they donated to Democrats in 2016. In 2016, in the impugned election cycle. And another government employee who told the judge they strongly dislike former President Trump. Both of these jurors told the judge they could be impartial throughout the trial. Well, at least they have self-reflection. The jury also included a teacher, an illustrator, a mechanic, and more. One juror had a child who was on the same high school sports team as Sussmann's child. I did not know that one. The overwhelming majority of the jurors selected told Cooper they had not heard of the case prior to jury service. Let's hear the evidence, people. Let's hear the evidence of what they failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Durham's team presented billing records dated beginning July 29, 2016, and through October 2016, revealing Sussmann repeatedly billed the Clinton campaign for work on the Alpha Bank opposition research against Trump. The government, during closing arguments, reminded jurors of a key text message Sussmann sent to Baker on the night before his meeting on the FBI. Durham's team alleges Sussmann put his, quote, lie in writing in his September 18 to text to Baker. What does the text say, people? The text message stated, quote, Jim, it's Michael Sussmann. I have something time sensitive I need to discuss, the text message stated, according to Durham. Do you have availability for a short meeting tomorrow? I'm coming on my own, not on behalf of a client or company. Want to help the Bureau? Thanks. Who are you going to believe? His words or your lying eyes? I'm coming not on behalf of a client, on my own. Not for a company, not a client. I'm not coming for anybody. Can we meet tomorrow? And then after that meeting, apparently bills the campaign for that meeting for which he was not there on behalf of the campaign. Baker replied, okay, I will find a time. What might work for you? Durham's team, Friday, during closing arguments, said the text message had, quote, 43 words and said 20 of those words were, quote, a lie. The defendant's own actions are overwhelming, government prosecutor John Algor said Friday. The evidence is proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Sussmann made a false statement to the FBI. He made two of them by the accounts. I mean, the text message wasn't in the context of a meeting with the FBI. He made two of them. No, I'm not there on behalf of a client. But the second I got out of that meeting, I billed the client for that meeting. But I told you the truth there, but not when I billed the client. You should return the only verdict supported by the evidence. Guilty. Oh my God. Sussmann didn't testify in his own defense. The FBI, at the time of receiving the information from Sussmann, was already conducting an investigation into alleged connections between Trump campaign and Russians. The code name for that investigation, what was it called again? Crossfire Hurricane. Okay, I mean it's preposterous. It's preposterous because he wrote a text the day before. Nothing suspicious about that text. I'm coming tomorrow. I'm not coming for any client. Can we meet? And then he billed the client for that meeting. But don't worry, he covered his ass sufficiently by texting the night before. I'm not coming for or on behalf of the client whom I'm billing for the meeting. Yeah. The FBI, after receiving the data from Sussmann, went on to investigate whether there was covert communications found that there was nothing there. Several current and former FBI officials and agents testified that the FBI was unable to substantiate any of the allegations in the white paper. One official even testified that the white paper describing the DNS data on the thumb drive was drafted by someone who was 5150. The official clarified on the stand that means he believed the individual who came to the conclusion of a Trump-Russia connection was suffering from some mental disability. Wow. Okay. And then we go over some of the trial. Let's just do it. Baker himself took the stand and testified that the FBI's investigation did not reveal that there was some kind of surreptitious communications channel. Despite the fact that for 3.5 years we were told that there was MSNBC, CNN, the Mueller investigation. No surreptitious communications back channel. Impeachment, 3.5 years of fake news, and now you get an acquittal. Do we care about this? Oh, whatever. You can go read the rest of it. The prosecution had argued that the information was brought to the FBI and shared with the media as part of an effort to create an October surprise. Well, they created it against then candidate Donald Trump. They created an October surprise. It didn't work, but it certainly served as a basis to undermine his presidency for, at the very least, 3.5 years. And still to this day, people believe there was collusion between Trump and Russia. When in reality, we now know that the only collusion between any political campaign and foreign interests was the exact opposite. Okay, but anyways, we'll cut that and you can go read that. Unbelievable. I mean, totally believable, but unbelievable. Let me see if I missed any. There is no way they'd not heard of the case. It's nearly impossible. Can't take this crap anymore later. What did I do? Outrageous. So tired is right. Can't take that call. Sorry. I don't know what this is. Anyway, so that's it. I should text Barnes. Oh, geez, Louise. Maybe I'll send Barnes, see if he can get in here. Give me 1 second if this call goes to voicemail. I'm such an idiot. I'll see if Barnes can pop in here. Well, amazing. What is my problem? I know I sent the link. Here it is. Okay, let me see if I can get Barnesy in on this. Copy link. Barnes. Text. Share. Boom. Shakalaka. If you can pop in, period. Sussmann, not guilty. Remember the rules for thee, but not for me. The jury was compromised, but no one would speak out to it. Besides, Clinton is protected class and untouchable. Well, the issue is that you're in DC, and the stats, I mean, we went over them in previous videos. The stats for the demographics in DC, 91% voted for Clinton. If you were to get a jury that was 50-50, it would be a statistical anomaly. It would almost be not representative of a jury pool in DC. So you can't, it's like, yeah, it was overwhelmingly Democrat and Hillary supporters who are necessarily also going to be overrepresented in political campaign donations. It's an incestuous environment, the DC environment. So, yeah, if you take a sample pool of a jury of your peers, 9 out of 10 of them are going to be Clinton supporters or donors, or donors, a lesser amount of donors. So, I mean, it proves the point. You're going to get politically motivated decisions out of DC where statistically it's an absolute freak show of an anomaly as to what the breakdown is in DC. 91% Clinton supporters or DNC supporters or Democrats. That means 91% of a randomly selected jury pool are going to be of that political ideology. So that's it. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, the other big news. Let's get back. Let's go from one nauseating story to the next. This one I think is a little worse. It was on my Twitter feed. Oh yeah, it was Maxime Bernier who tweeted. Let's go back and listen to, you know what? Hold on. Put these on. No, you know what? Forget it. I don't like the way they feel. I'll put it on mute.
What does the research tell us now about the risk for air passengers contracting COVID-19 on commercial flights?
Yeah, so there's been very few reports, extremely rare reports actually, of transmission aboard aircrafts.
Let's just pause it there. Just to quote her, it's extremely rare. There have been very few cases of reported transmission on aircrafts. I will remind everyone out there who may not be aware of this or who may have forgotten. Currently in Canada, unvaccinated children aged 12 and up and adults aged 18 and up, unvaccinated children and unvaccinated adults cannot board a plane or a train in their own gosh darn country. Not people who test positive. Just by virtue, you could test negative. And if you're unvaccinated, you can't board a plane or a train. And here's what Theresa Tam, the chief medical officer of Canada, has to say about the stats.
There's been very few reports, extremely rare reports actually, of transmission aboard aircrafts.
Very few reported cases of transmission aboard aircrafts from the government that says follow the science. I'm going to see if the echo is removed if I do this, because I don't want to keep hitting mute. very few reported cases of transmission from the government that says trust the science. And
so there's been very few reports, extremely rare reports actually, of transmission aboard aircrafts.
so now let's understand the science behind banning not unvaccinated people who test positive, just unvaccinated people who test negative. Let's then now try to understand the science. Dr. Theresa Tam, try to explain the science there. Very few cases of transmission, and we're going to get into the why, on planes in general. That's even assuming, and that's even taking, the cases where people test positive despite being vaccinated. Try to explain the science there, because there is no science to that. She's saying that it's not a method, it's not a vector of transmission. Very few, rare. And notwithstanding that, kids aged 12 to 17 and adults unvaccinated can't board planes in Canada because Justin Trudeau and Dr. Theresa Tam trust the science. It's obvious it's not science anymore. It is about punishment. It is about coercion to get to a certain end result. And I won't comment on the science of that end result, but it gets even worse. Listen to this.
And I think we are learning more and more about some of the technologies, if you like, in terms of the ventilation and the way that aircraft ventilations work is actually, the modern aircraft is actually really good.
Oh, we're learning more and more, like HEPA filters. Like we didn't understand that HEPA filters and the filtration system on an aircraft is actually quite good. We're learning more and more. I know for a fact that people knew this for a fact before 2020. I know for a fact that people knew this right from the beginning in 2020, because if you had noticed, people marketing HEPA filters went through the roof. It was marketed specifically for indoor air purification. We know, knew, and have pretty much always known that good ventilation it reduces any airborne transmission. It's one of the reasons why they were pushing for better ventilation in schools. It's one of the reasons for which the schools, as a response to COVID and as a method of increasing ventilation in their crappily ventilated schools, were opening windows in winter. And I'm saying this from firsthand experience. In my kids' school, they were opening the windows in winter to increase ventilation. They were doing this at local schools because in some places the ventilation is so bad. Well, we're going to open windows in winter. But Dr. Theresa Tam is saying, oh no, it's 2022 and a half now. And we're learning about, what makes airplanes properly ventilated. We're learning why there has been rare cases of transmission on planes. We're learning why. But you unvaccinated, filthy Canadian citizens, you still can't get on a plane, even if you test negative, because science.
In terms of air exchanges and the way that the airflow occurs in the cabin. So there has been a few reports, but actually very, very little. I think we continue to ask provinces to report to us if they.
I think we continue. Yeah, I think they do. I think they do.
Positive passengers, but have not demonstrated an actual transmission on board the aircraft itself.
There have been reported. What's my dog eating? There have been reported cases of positive passengers, but very few reports of transmission itself. And yet they insist, and they just voted to maintain this travel ban on unvaccinated Canadians. They can test negative. They just can't fly because they're unvaccinated. Despite the fact that there have been cases of positive travelers, and yet even still, no outbreaks, no super spreader flight. And I'll refresh everyone's memory on the quackery from Dr. Tam in a second, but
have not received that kind of report. But the other thing is that
what's the other thing?
In that setting, there are ways in which you could put in procedures, like mask wearing.
Listen to this.
People are sitting facing the same direction with seat backs, in front of them.
Correct me if I'm wrong, people. I believe Dr. Theresa Tam just suggested or implied that seat backs prevent the transmission of viruses. I think that's what she actually. Let's just replay it. I think that's what she might have alluded to there.
People are sitting facing the same direction with seat backs, in front of them.
Am I out of my lane to say this is idiotic? Seat backs It's the new barrier. It's the new plexiglass. Seat backs. It's I'm going to get to the super chats after just break this down, but seat backs. That's what it is.
So
Everyone's sitting in the same direction. It's directional. And they've got these defense shields of seat backs because you're sitting shoulder to shoulder with 3 people 2 aisles away. But the seat back, if everyone just walks straight and, hold your nostrils, we can do this.
there are a number of reasons, perhaps, as to why we are actually not seeing the actual conveyance itself as being a main area or setting of spread.
There are a number of reasons for which we are not seeing the actual conveyance. And yet, despite that factual statement supported by, actual statistics, actual fact, not conveyance on planes, despite that, they continue to impose an unconstitutional, absolutely abusive ban on traveling for unvaccinated children aged 12 and up in Canada. And it was ratified yesterday. NDP, Bloc, all voted for it. I was going to say something. I should weigh my words. Treacherous is what it is. Treacherous. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dr. Theresa Tam, when I refer to quackery, masks sexual activity. I know we've talked about it. I just want to remind everybody, and it's not even the most insane thing that medical experts have said. Canada's top doctor, consider using a mask during sexual activity, or maybe just do sexual activity unidirectionally with a plane seat in between. Never mind. Canada's top doctor dispensed some important sexual education today for those attempting to date during the pandemic. Consider wearing a mask during sex. Sexual health is important part of our overall health, she said in the statement. However, sex can be complicated in the time of COVID-19, especially for those without an intimate partner. Yada, yada, yada. While obviously the sexual activity with the lowest risk involves yourself alone. Are you sure about that, Dr. Theresa Tam? I mean, there are ways to make sex with others safe during a pandemic. Where does she say it? Whatever. Here. Avoid close contact by kids. I want you to know that she said it. I didn't make this up. Dr. Theresa Tam said, consider wearing a face mask during sex. And it's part and parcel of what is going on with this. It's not about science. If it were about science, Dr. Theresa Tam just confirmed scientifically why there is not even the slightest, remotest justification, scientific justification, for banning unvaccinated travelers from getting on planes and trains if they show a negative COVID test. Nothing. What she has shown is a persistence in dehumanizing humans. Implement and impose policy that denies humanity to humans. Abuse them, demean them, degrade them, coerce them into the desired result through wholly unscientific measures by your own admission. And then, but claim to trust the science, claim to rely on the science. Okay, let's get to some super chats. I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. Brent Mosey, how you doing, sir? And that is from Airplane. A classic. Liam, what's his name? Not Liam Neeson. Oh, geez, what's the actor from, he's the Canadian guy. Leslie Nielsen. Nek Timor Nek Favore says, the Office of the Saskatchewan Information and Privacy Commissioner is investigating the Saskatoon Public Library for privacy violations because libraries still requiring vax testing after the Saskatchewan government repealed all related laws. It takes, there's the old expression about a reputation. It takes a lifetime to build and a moment to destroy. The legitimacy, the credibility, and the honor of nations is we're seeing it abides by the same rule. It takes 100, geez Louise, how old is Canada? 1869. It takes 175 years to build a country, 2 years to destroy it. Theophrastus 3.0. I'll respond to it after I read it. This is about Sussmann, I presume. This proves that our nation is doomed and that, I'm not reading that, we live in an Orwellian nightmare. I think you're wrong, Theophrastus, and I'll tell you why. They'll get away with some outrageous decisions like this. The public mockery should be enough to sway public opinion. I'm telling you this, I'm not saying it just to please the YouTube overlords. I won't read the chat because I don't want to get into trouble. Violence will not resolve anything, and it will not solve the problem. Because unfortunately, at least in certain countries, it's not an equal fight. You don't have equal tools. And even if you could, you'll lose. Even if you thought you're going to lose, you're going to give all the reasons in the world for the government to come down with even harsher measures. And this is true in the United States as well. Hold on. I'm blocking the sex bot. Okay, you're done. It will not work. And we've seen how that solution just doesn't work in any event in other societies. It has to be a swell, an upswell. It has to be public opinion. This is no longer. This is a joke. It has to be reflected politically. So publicize the idiocy, mock the idiocy, not in the ha-ha, in the bring it to everyone's attention. Sussmann acquitted. The jury said, the guy who billed the campaign for the meeting says he wasn't there for a client, and we believe him because he texted the FBI the night before, because, it's not like lawyers are not crafty to think about how do I cover my ass with a text? We can't explain the end of the mass hysteria. STFUFFS. All right. So that was Theresa Tam. Let me get this. So let's get to, we'll get to that in a second because what time is it now? Okay, we got 19 minutes. Did Canada just ban all guns? It would seem that Canada is well on its way to doing just that. Let's pull up an article. We're making it into Fox News again. You know it's bad when Canada makes it into the international MSM of the United States. We made it into well, let me just cut this one. We made it into CNN when Montreal sewage was rerouted into the St. Lawrence River. We made it into CNN back in the day. Montreal dumps 2 billion gallons of raw sewage into the St. Lawrence River, October 2015. I remember where I was when this happened. So we made it into CNN back then. I remember where I was because my office was in Old Montreal at this time. And I went down to the Old Montreal port, which is on the St. Lawrence River, just to see what was going on. And I saw, there were so many of them, you'd think they were jellyfish, condoms in the water. There were so many condoms in the water because apparently people flush condoms down the toilets. Viva Frei condoms. Come on. Condoms, water. Look at this. Here we go. Are we sharing this? Oh, Canadian Tire. Booyah. Yeah, no. The amazing thing. Oh, here we go.
Sewage dump. There's a west to east wind, so it's blowing all of the sludge and garbage that's going into the water into the corner of the port here, so we can see what's going into the corner.
Sorry.
That's something they told us.
That's very loud.
Flush condoms down the toilet. It's not just that there's one condom. There are multiple condoms. Condom. There must be 15 condoms there. Just gonna turn it sideways. I'm zoomed in on my iPhone.
Look at this.
It's endless condoms.
And they're used. They're not new condoms.
Zoom in again. Look at them. That is atrocious.
Anyhow, so we made international news yet again. And this time it's Justin Trudeau. Just see something here. Gross is an understatement. Because that means, there's poop in the water. You weren't allowed touching the water. Used condoms. Possibly the second grossest thing after vomit. Okay, anyways, moving on. Canadian PM Trudeau announces legislation to freeze handgun ownership buyback assault-style weapons. Assault-style weapons. And I was once upon a time wet behind the ears. I now appreciate assault style refers to the way something looks. Yeah. Assault style doesn't mean anything. It means something that looks like scary. That doesn't look like a Remington 12 gauge, because automatic weapons have been illegal in the States as well as in Canada for a long time. Machine guns are illegal. You have semi-automatic, which is, I won't get into. I don't know the mechanisms, but assault style I know means nothing, because you can have the functioning of a standard rifle on what looks like an assault rifle, and people call it assault rifle and think that they're talking about something specific. The buyback we had talked about previously, because that was under the previous order in council that I sent in that I linked in the comment. This is new because this is handguns. And for anybody who didn't know, we already had the strictest, among the strictest laws relating to handguns anywhere that I can really think of quickly offhand. If you want to have a handgun, you're not allowed owning one for self-defense, period. You're not allowed owning any firearm for self-defense in Canada, period. If you have a long arm permit, it's a non-restricted rifle license. It's for hunting. Maximum capacity in the magazines are 5 rounds. That's long rifles, long arms, long guns. To get a handgun, it's another 2-day course. It's a background check that's beyond anything you've ever heard, and it's an authorization. It's a specific permit for restricted firearms, because small arms, handguns, are restricted in Canada. We already had among the most stringent gun laws anywhere. Now, in response to what happened in the United States, Justin Trudeau seizing on a tragedy in a foreign country and importing it, even though, importing it to enact policy that would not even respond to the imported crisis that he's importing to exploit for political purposes. This is what he's up to now. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced Monday that his government is introducing legislation to, quote, implement national freeze on handgun ownership throughout the country. Freeze on handgun ownership. What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada. We recognize that the vast majority of gun owners use them safely and in accordance with the law. But other than using firearms for sport, shooting, and hunting, there is no reason anyone in Canada should need guns in their everyday lives. Well, first of all, setting aside Papa Justin, telling Canadians what they need in their everyday lives, because if you can't have them for self-defense, as is the case under existing law, firearms really serve 2 purposes. Sport, that would either be hunting or sport shooting, or self-defense, home defense. To the extent that the government has already outlawed the latter, their statement is still contradicted, because if you don't need them in your everyday lives unless you're into sport shooting and hunting, which a lot of Canadians are. Firearm ownership in Canada is pretty high. I think it's 37. Oh, I forget the exact stat. It's a quarter of what it is in the States, but it's still relatively high. And we have gun violence in Canada. It's just a different type. It's not done with hunting rifles, and we'll get there. We have gun problems in Canada. We have firearm violence problems in Canada. You know what the kicker is? It's not done with legally procured or even stolen legal firearms. It's done with black market firearms, small handguns, which nothing in banning law-abiding citizens from doing the 2-day PAL course. Nothing in this legislation is going to actually resolve the actual problem, which is black market imports of illegal firearms into Canada. But let's Papa Trudeau says he's telling us what we need in our everyday lives. You don't need a car with that many horsepower. You don't need that big of a stake, Viva. I'll tell you what you need in your day-to-day life. Let's see what we got here. Where are we? Okay, we recognize yada yada yada. Okay, sorry, we were there. Canada Minister of Public Safety Marco Mendicino. By the way, remind you, who is Marco Mendicino? He's the liar. He's the guy that lied in the context of invoking the Emergencies Act by saying that truckers and the Ottawa protests, there were threats of a very serious type of bodily violence against women at the protests. This is the guy, by the way, making policy, liar, outright liar, because by the fallout of invoking the Emergencies Act to suppress and squash the protest, turns out the RCMP didn't even need them to do it, and apparently was surprised by the invocation of the order, which means that they weren't apprised of it and certainly didn't request it. Marco Mendicino is a liar, proven, confirmed liar. Let's hear what the liar has to say today. Let me just go flag a super chat so I can get back to it afterwards. Star it, not flag it. Sorry. Marco Mendicino also said that a mandatory buyback program for assault-style weapons will go into effect later this year if the bill passes, calling it Canada's most significant action on gun violence in a generation. Let me see this. If banning lawfully procured small arms and assault-style weapons is the most significant action on gun violence in a generation, that would imply, suggest, if not outright state, that assault-style weapons and lawfully procured small arms are the cause of gun violence that is being resolved through this action. But it's not. But don't let facts get in the way of oppressive government policy. When Mendicino says this is going to be the biggest action we've ever taken in a generation on gun violence by banning AR-15s and buyback and shutting down small arms acquisition, that presumes that the gun violence that they are resolving is caused by AR-15 or assault-style rifles and lawfully procured small arms. And spoiler alert, it's not. Yada, 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 yada. They're going to be buying back. Okay. And by the way, a mandatory buyback is not a buyback. It's actually confiscation. It's compensated confiscation, but it's like someone saying, I get to take your dog. I'm buying back your dog. First of all, you didn't own what you're buying back in the first place to buy it back. Second of all, even if you did own it, you didn't sell it to me with a buyback option. So that is called unilateral modification of a contract, even if I bought it directly from the government. The government never owned it to buy it back in the first place. It is purely and simply confiscation that they happen to justify through compensation. Did I say confiscation the first time or compensation? It is state-sanctioned, compelled confiscation that is being justified by compensation. About 55,000 new handguns have been registered annually in Canada over the last decade. Okay, interesting. That's good. Now, what do you draw from that fact? 55,000 new handguns have been registered annually in Canada over the last decade. Okay, how many crimes are committed with those lawfully registered and lawfully procured firearms? Spoiler alert, the majority is not. The vast majority is not committed with lawfully procured firearms. So surely if you ban the lawfully procured firearms that are not responsible for the actual gun violence you're trying to solve, surely that'll solve the problem. The legislation will also, this is where it gets stunningly brazen in its invasiveness. The legislation will also create new red flag laws that will allow courts to remove guns and suspend licenses for people who pose a threat to themselves or others. Magazines that hold more than 5 rounds will also be banned under the new laws. I was under the impression that magazines that held more than 5 rounds were already banned. Someone in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong. But let's just get to this. It will allow courts to remove the guns and suspend licenses for people who pose a threat to themselves or others. Once upon a time, before I met the corruption that is the Justin Trudeau government, I said this makes sense. A couple of years back, we had that mass murder in Nova Scotia of this dude, name need not be mentioned, killed 21 people over an extended period of time. And we'll get to that. I pulled up an article to talk about that. And I said, apparently this individual was flagged to the police. 16 times the police visited him. He was known to have had firearms. In that case, I can understand that court intervention could reasonably be justified. For an individual who seems to pose a threat to other people. He was, police visited him 16 times. He had neighbors and friends call the police to say this guy's armed and he seems to be dangerous. Apparently, he's making threats about wanting to kill police officers. In that case, I agree with it. When I have seen the government come into the Ottawa protest and tell the truckers that they're posing a risk to others by bringing their children to the protest, all right, now how do we implement this? Now, how do we implement the best intentioned law that is drafted this way? An individual who poses a risk to themselves or others can have their guns confiscated or their licenses suspended. All right. And they come in and say, Mr. Trucker from Saskatchewan, you brought your kids to a protest, which we've declared unlawful occupation. You're putting at risk your child. We are now going to suspend your license, and you use it for hunting. You use it in the farm. You use it for your day-to-day life in Saskatchewan. We're going to suspend your license and confiscate your firearms. We're going to abuse of the law. Knowingly, we're going to abuse of the law to go after the people that we don't like. Oh, what's that, Tamara Litch? What's that, Randy Hillier? You're talking about fighting government mandates? Ooh, you sound like you're posing a threat to posing a risk to yourselves or others. Let's go ahead and suspend your firearms. And then it goes on to talk about the deadliest mass shooting. Listen to this. The deadliest mass shooting in Canada's history occurred about 2 years ago when a gunman opened fire around parts of Nova Scotia. 22 people. We're going to get to that because that in and of itself is shocking. Not in terms of the fire, like Uvalde. Shocking, not in the weapon and the incident is shocking. What became even more shocking, like Uvalde, was the police response or the absence of the police response. This man in Nova Scotia killed 22 people over, if it wasn't 24 hours, it was pretty darn close. Driving around in a replica RCMP police car, wearing apparently a bona fide RCMP uniform, and the RCMP knew it and didn't disclose that fact to the public for 10 hours. So, it's shocking. It's always shocking when these violent incidents occur. What was even more shocking in that Nova Scotia was the government incompetence, the government lack of transparency. The police knew that this individual had done what he had done to at least, by the time they knew, a dozen people. They did not disclose to the public that a firearm-toting murderer was driving around in a replica police car wearing a police uniform. They didn't think it was relevant. Rifle magazines have always been 5 rounds only. That was my understanding too. I took the course. I know what it is. And when you're duck hunting, even if you have a rifle that can hold 5 shots, when you're duck hunting, the max is 3. Viva, now I know you're sitting on a Tesla coil. No, I'm sitting on a flipping unattractive chair with a pillow under my butt to give me an extra 6 inches. Government would like to give a diagnosis to all citizens or determine their domestic. What do you think? Hey, by the way, guys, the government told you to download that mental wellness app. What do you think happens if you download that mental wellness app that goes to the government and say you're suffering from some form of distress? And if they know that you have a firearm because you're already on a registry, see what happens. I'm not black-pilled. This is red-pilled. This is how you see how the government implements policy to criminalize lawful activity and then gives away free apps to help you. And my goodness, download that app, answer that questionnaire, tell the government that you're suffering from mental distress, that you're thinking that the last 2.5 years have been so hard on you that, you need to call a hotline. See how fast they show up at your house. Say, whoop, we know that you have a weapon, and now we're going to come and suspend it because you're a threat to yourself or others. Okay, I see Karahalios is in the background. I'm going to read this, and then we're going to get on with Jim Karahalios trying to save Canada one day at a time. In essence, I thought this was Justin Bieber. Justin believes in the ongoing victimization of law-abiding gun owners by effectively expropriating their property without compensation. Oh, there is compensation, Brian. Come on. It's a buyback. It's not a confiscation. It's like the euphemisms of tyranny. It's not a buyback. I'm sorry, it's not a confiscation because we're here. I didn't. I broke your knees, but here's $500 for crutches. I compensated you. Hold on, what was this? Oh my God, Viva, this is the first I hear that the guy in Texas was in a police car and uniform. No. Nova Scotia, not Texas. No misinformation there. This was the Nova Scotia shooting. The guy was driving an RCMP car with an RCMP uniform, and they knew it. And I think the first time they disclosed it was something like 10 o'clock the next day. They also knew, we'll get to it. And last chat before we bring on Jim. Brent Mosey says, lived in Canada for 15 years, told people Canada was different. I'm wrong. I don't know what you meant when you told them it was different. Okay, this is really the last one before I bring on Jim. The only mental or wellness tests that need to be given are for individuals who want to become politicians, must have no urge to control others. The transition into Jim Karahalios is going to be very organic because of the coloring in the background. We're going to go from yellow to yellow and bringing it out. Jim, sir, how are you doing?
We're doing great. There's
okay. Hold on, just do mic check 1 2, and I'm gonna let the audience tell me if your audio is too loud.
Mic check 1 2.
It might be loud. It might just be my mic. Let me see.
Is it a little loud?
No, don't worry. Here, I'll automatically adjust. Let me see if the chat says. Let's go. And if it's too loud, I'll lower you on my end. Okay, everyone says good. Jim, okay, how you doing?
We're doing fantastic. There's 2 days to go. The New Blue Party's first election campaign. Voting's on Thursday. And I'm really happy that you gave me the opportunity to come on. So thank you for devoting some time to Ontario provincial politics.
Well, I'm not telling people who to vote for. I'm just saying nothing. I've had you on the channel before. You're amazing. Your wife is amazing. You're both politicians, and I dare say 2 of the good ones. So the vote is on Thursday. For those who don't know, this is provincial Ontario elections. Give us an update. Give us like the lowdown of what the deal is.
So the Doug Ford PCs are up for re-election for a second term, and their strategy has been to not let anyone know there's an election. They've been trying to put everyone asleep in this last month, but we've already made history. This is our first election campaign. As we've been on your show before, my wife Belinda is the MPP in the riding of Cambridge, and a year and a half ago, she was removed from the PC caucus, and 19 of us were removed from the PC party for voting against Doug Ford's lockdown bill. And we've been working diligently for a year and a half with our members on the ground and our riding leaders. And we were the first party to register 124 candidates, which is 1 candidate for every single riding in this election. And the media and the Ford PCs have done their absolute most to say as little as possible about the New Blue Party in this election, and to get through this election as quickly as possible so that as few Ontarians as possible know that there is another option other than the establishment parties. But it's our first election campaign, and we've already made a dent. Grassroots strategy candidates knocking on doors, putting up signs, and we're on the map. The New Blue Party of Ontario is on the map, and in every single riding, there'll be a name of a New Blue Party, of the New Blue Party on the ballot in our first election campaign.
And now, when you say 124 candidates, that is what we call a full slate. I mean,
Right.
I think some of the major political parties don't even run a full slate, despite being established for a long time. Well, okay, so tell us what's going on. Well, first of all, people might not have seen our first 1 or 2 interviews.
Right.
Give us a bit of your rundown, a bit of your wife, and tell us who you are, what you've gone through to get to where you are before we even get into some of the issues that are facing Ontarians right now.
So that could probably eat up half of the 1 hour, maybe the whole hour. So I'll try to do the short version. If you want details, you can check out newblueontario.com. But let me just try to do the short version, and you're going to jump in and cut me off if it's dragging on too much. We did everything we could for years to work from the inside. That's what the establishment and the lobbyists like to say. You got to work it from the inside. You got to be patient. And that's what we did. Axe the Carbon Tax was a campaign I started in 2017. Then I pushed back against voter fraud, and we had thousands of supporters that were behind us in Ontario signing up to join the PC party to say, the carbon tax position, you got to be against it. Stop cozying up to Justin Trudeau. And they started determining who their candidates were going to be for the last election through voter fraud. And we did everything we could. My wife jumped into provincial politics in 2018, and she ran for the PC. She won a local nomination. We thought there was hope with Doug Ford in charge. But what we quickly saw in the first 2 years is the PCs were determined to just become the Ontario provincial wing of the Justin Trudeau Federal Liberal Party of Canada. I ran for PC president in 2018. They rigged an entire convention of over 1,000 people, and most of the establishment members at that convention stayed very quiet, didn't want to say a thing. That's still in court. In 2017, before that, they tried to crush our family over the Axe the Carbon Tax campaign by suing me. I won that court case in 6 weeks when a judge looked at it and said, no legal theory, no facts. And finally, the PC said, enough of this working from the inside, enough of this democracy. This is all nonsense. They corrected voter fraud because they don't have elections inside their parties anymore. Just Doug Ford picks all his candidates. So what a concept, right? You can get away with, you can solve voter fraud by just not having elections. And in 2020, my wife, the MPP for the riding of Cambridge, was the only current or former PC MPP and the only politician in Canada, federally or provincially, to vote against her own government on a piece of lockdown mandate COVID-related legislation. They removed her from caucus over one vote. They removed 19 of us on the Cambridge PC Riding Association. Thousands of people across Ontario who had been following us and were upset with the direction of the Ford PCs said, we need a new option. We have no one to vote for in 2022. And we started working on a new Blue Party of Ontario. This stuff takes a long time to put together. I had a health challenge in 2021 that we covered a bit, which slowed us down. 6 rounds of chemotherapy and 3 surgeries for my leg. I'm back and better than ever. There's no more cancer in my body. I go for checkups every 3 months. And I've been on the campaign trail all month as the leader of the new Blue Party. And we were able to get our founding constitution up, register ridings in almost every riding. As I said, register a candidate in every single riding. We had one gentleman who was forced by his employer on the federal government side to remove himself, but his name is still on the ballot. So we have a new Blue Party appearing on all 124 ballots in this election. And we have the new blueprint, our party platform, and we've been making a dent in our first election campaign. So beyond our expectations, and I've been traveling and spending the second last day, election day minus 48 hours with you. And we'll do another live stream tomorrow with Richard Sirrett, who you know.
Absolutely. Richard Sirrett is on Saga 960 or Saga 690. I forget which one it is. I love her. I love Richard. What you just described, for anybody who has never dabbled in politics, it's almost not I don't know if insurmountable is the right word. It's incomprehensible almost to fathom that you've done all of this. And this is not to kiss your butt at all. No butt, except for the butt. No butt kissing. It's inconceivable that you've done this in such a short period of time. What has been the workload like to get this done? Is this 24/7? And how do you raise money? How do you live while you're doing this?
It's all fueled on the shoulders of our supporters on the ground. And it's only possible because people push us forward and our loyal supporters say, keep moving forward. And I'll be honest, when we were struck with my health challenge, it was after we announced the new Blue Party, because we announced it in October of 2020. And 2 months later, I got diagnosed. And there were many times when you're like, I couldn't walk for almost a year because my right leg was broken. And I had a full leg cast from the top to the bottom of my leg. And I had to relearn how to walk. And there was many times when, I doubted it and I said, what am I doing this for? Like, where is the end? I know why I was doing it, but when you're not feeling well, idle hands are the work of the devil, and the devil creeps in your mindset. But you look at all of the riding leaders that we have and all of the members and the supporters on the ground and the prayers that they would send and the calls and the emails and the messages. And they said, we will support you because you're doing the right thing. And we want you to keep moving forward. And we want you to take care of yourself and your family and our little guy first. But keep pushing forward if that's what you believe you need to do. And it is necessary for the future of Ontario because the best is yet to come. We just have to make sure we don't stop. And it was on all of my campaign stops. Last week, I did 4 stops, starting in Orillia, ending in Sudbury, came back. 2 days ago, I went out to Alexandria and back on the same day. And every meeting we have with supporters on the ground, they look me in the eye and they give you all the motivation and all the fuel you need to keep going. We made an expansive process of applying to run as a new Blue Party candidate. and we had over 124 people eager to run. We had 3 nominations where more than one qualified candidate stepped forward in ridings, and more applicants than we would have imagined. And it's all very humbling. And whenever you get a roadblock or a trial or a tribulation, and doubt creeps in my mind, and you think maybe it's time to pack it up, you look a supporter in the eye and they say to you, you have given me hope again. I haven't voted for years, and you have given me hope to vote. And it's all the encouragement you need, and or that I need. And the other encouragement is every day playing with our son, Victor, and knowing that if we don't do what we're doing, things will get worse a whole lot faster. And my wife and I and our team, and with hundreds of people on the ground, we put it together for June 2nd in our first election campaign.
So you know, when you say you look in the eyes of supporters and it makes you want to, you know, keep going and go harder. I don't know if it's being blackpilled, but you know, I when I'm talking to people and they like do something, and I say I don't know what's left to be done here. But I do think if we are to see a party like your party with your principles and your policies actually succeed, people might be more convinced by my underlying theory that this has to be a political revolution, a political victory, and not anything else. What the biggest policy questions before we'll get into Justin Trudeau's announced gun ban, because it does have local municipal level consequences.
Yes.
What are the biggest policies right now of the Blue Party that you wish to implement if you are to, or at least wish to be meaningful opposition on if you get elected? You
made a couple statements there, and there's a couple different points to pack in and respond to, in addition to your question about what we're running on. And the new blueprint is our platform. Did you know the Ford PCs don't even have a platform? They're running for re-election, and they haven't released an election platform.
This is Google this
stuff. And they are running on a budget they tabled on the last day of the legislature, and they threw the budget down and ran out of the building before Belinda could ask them any questions, before debate could be had, and they just got out of there. And Doug Ford's been hiding. The establishment media has been helping him because they set up these rules for the debate, the leaders' debate, and they said you need to have a sitting MPP and a candidate in every riding, and we achieved that. And then they just changed the rules, and they said, well, no, forget it. We don't want New Blue in there. So he's campaigning on no platform. We've got the new blueprint, which is the most pressing issues that have come up in the last 4 years of the Ford PCs betraying their values and principles. And it starts with, we were obviously the first to start speaking out against the lockdown and mandate measures related to COVID in Ontario. The Doug Ford PCs have been running away from it, and we knew they were going to do that, but we are calling for a ban on COVID vaccine passports, using legislation and fines to do that, whether it's in the private or the public sector. And in addition to that, restitution for those that were harmed by the state of emergencies that Doug Ford put in place, like the trucking businesses. They shut down 39 of them without due process after the Ottawa protest. And in addition, a rollback of all of the PC's legislation in the last 2 years related to COVID, including Bill 100. But we knew that this was going to have to be a party built more than just on lockdowns and mandates, because the Ford PCs were going to run away from their record. And the other items that we're talking about, getting rid of the taxpayer subsidy for political parties in Ontario. Many people aren't aware that in the last 10 years, the Liberals, the NDP, and the PC party in Ontario have been operating and funding their operations through taxpayer money on a per vote subsidy basis, over $100 million in 10 years. The Ford PC said they were going to get rid of it. They brought back the subsidy and increased it by 40%. And renewing political accountability starts with getting taxpayer money out of the pockets of political parties. We're the only party campaigning on that. They gave the lifeline to the Toronto Star, which was going bankrupt a couple of years ago. They gave them an online gambling license. We need one provincial party in Ontario that stands up for free press and defunding the establishment media. That means canceling the Toronto Star's online gambling license. And I'll give you the next three top headline items that I guess I would say gets a lot of support for us. In healthcare, rehiring the nurses that lost their jobs and other healthcare workers as a response to, or in relation to, the mandates that we saw come in place with the Ford PCs. Belinda was the only MPP to stand up against critical race theory in our schools with that Bill 67 that we covered. So we're talking about banning critical race theory and left-wing political ideologies from the classroom, and offering tax credits for those who choose to homeschool or have alternative education, and because they can't wait for the New Blue Party to reform the education system. And finally, on the economy, tax relief by reducing the HST, getting rid of Doug Ford's industrial carbon tax. Yes, Doug Ford put in an industrial carbon tax, similar to what happened to you guys in Quebec, and taking down the wind turbines so we can reduce electricity rates and get Ontario's economy back up and running. Those are the 7 key points of our new blueprint and our party platform. And the Ford PCs have no platform other than to extend the legacy of the McGuinty-Wynne Liberals.
I'm gonna bring up the. We talked about the Bill 67, but let me bring it up just to refresh everybody's memory. Jim, you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so Bill 67, Racial Equity in the Education System Act 2022. A number of amendments. I just want to get to I want to get to some of the most important ones. Promoting racial equity in schools, racial equity related requirements to function on the council. Summarize this law for people who don't know. I mean, the headline is pretty self-explanatory, but they want to implement not equality, but equity. And those are two very distinct terms. What was the essence of this bill, which also made national headlines?
This is a great example of one of many times in the last 4 years the Ford PCs have jumped on board with left-wing ideology or top-down establishment ideology against the rights of taxpayers and parents. And they do it in the hope that the media won't actually expose what the details are. So an MPP in the legislature in Ontario put forward Bill 67 a couple months ago, and a nice, like you said, a headline or a title of the legislation that it'd be hard to disagree with. Everyone is against racism. And it went through the legislature, and not much was said. I think a couple articles on True North News were talked about it, spoke about the details of the bill. And the foundation of this bill is based on critical race theory, even though they don't actually say critical race theory in the bill, because the foundation of the bill, and if you hear the MPP who tabled it and her presentations and her speeches inside and outside the legislature, it's based on the idea that our schools in Ontario are all systemically racist. And it gets even worse when you read into what they planned on doing to combat quote unquote systemic racism in our schools, which is to fine students or others, teachers, parents in the education system for subconscious racism. And we'll define, they were planning on defining what that is later on. And the Ford PCs in the legislature, every single MPP in the legislature, even independents like Rick Nichols, voted in favor of this bill. Belinda was the only one to vote against it at second reading, because we need 3 readings for something to become law. There were 3 MPPs in the legislature from the PC side that were in debate enthusiastically saying, I can't wait for this to become law, which even on a fiscal standpoint, it boggles the mind, because the bill was calling for forcing school boards to hire administrators and bureaucrats trained in this political ideology. After Belinda voted against it at second reading, you were so gracious to have us on and cover how important it was. Many others started talking about it, even though some of the others didn't mention that Belinda was the one that voted against the bill. Conrad Black wrote about it in a very good piece about us just a few days ago in the National Post, and he mentioned Belinda voted against it. And by raising awareness, 2 weeks later, Belinda went back to the legislature, questioned the PCs about the bill, and got them to publicly reverse course. It's amazing how opinions and the science can change in 2 weeks. 2 weeks earlier, they were saying they were all for it. 2 weeks later, they said they wouldn't pass it through third reading and make it law. And on the last day of the legislature, she was able to table and read out and put on the record of the Ontario legislature a petition that we had at stopwoke.ca against critical race theory in our schools. And that all came together very quickly in 2 to 4 weeks. And it highlights the necessity of having the New Blue Party of Ontario, both inside and outside of the legislature across Ontario, because the establishment parties and the establishment press, when ideas like this are brought forward, they give it as little attention as possible and they don't allow the public to know the details of the bill unless someone decides to go on the legislative website and read it on their own. And it's important that we talk about this stuff, raise awareness, and get the grassroots effort to push back. And it can provide results if that is done.
And so the bill is dead in the water. It's not coming back anytime soon that anybody knows of.
Well, it went to committee after second reading, and then the election was called. They didn't bring it back for third reading, and Belinda pushed the PCs to say they're not bringing it back. But whatever happens after Election Day on June 2nd, an MPP can bring it back. And we've got to remain diligent on this stuff and flag it if another MPP brings it back. And I'm pretty confident that the NDP will bring it back in some form. And the PCs, if no one's looking and no one's talking about it, they'll just enthusiastically pass it. The best part of this that I also forgot to mention was the local media in Waterloo Region demanded that Belinda explain why she voted against the bill. And there was an article written up where she explained it better than I just did. And the NDP MPP who was advocating for the bill in that article could only conclude her advocacy for this solution by saying, well, at least we're talking about racism. And when they say that, you know, they've thrown the white flag and they can't even defend their own ideas, like the education system being systemically racist, the idea that we should fine parents, teachers, students for subconscious racism. And that was only possible by you and others raising awareness to it, and Belinda taking the lead, and our grassroots supporters contacting MPPs and saying this is outrageous.
Yeah, they use the same justification with Jussie Smollett. Like after the hoax became known, they say, well, these things do happen and it's important we talk about it.
Right.
That law or that proposed bill, which basically, like we discussed at the time, presupposes racism within the educational institution. If it's there, I don't think a law, if it's in the system itself, a law is going to do nothing. If it's in the system itself, have a look at the system. It's possible that it's not actually in the system, but it's actually only in the eyes of these politicians who want to create the problem so they can then solve it. Talking about institutionalized racism in the education system, while at the same time implementing these vaccine passport bans, which disparately impact certain races and certain minorities. So yeah, it's ironic that there might actually be some form of institutionalized racism. It just might happen to be with the policymakers and not the institutions or the people. But on that subject of sorts, I guess we've got to know your position on the Ottawa protest, because I mean, although that made national headlines, it was something of an Ontario issue. You're going to be asked to opine on it. I don't know what you said publicly or what your position is publicly. How do you feel about the protest itself, the government response from Ottawa to the federal, and what would you have done differently?
Well, I was there the first weekend, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the Ottawa protest, the trucker convoy. And the New Blue team got there, and it was very peaceful, and it was very cold, but it was very peaceful, and there were lots of people. And we were proud that we were able to get speakers and a mic on a flatbed. So the New Blue team locally and our candidates led the way. We rented a speakers and a mic on that Friday and Saturday. We put it on a flatbed, and it allowed for the crowd to hear from speakers, including Ezra Levant. And because it all just came together so quickly, and we were happy to do whatever we could to just help out. And the convoy was not about me. It wasn't about others. Some of the others that decided to label themselves as leaders of the convoy protest tried to turn the convoy protest into something that was driven by them. I'm thinking of one or two of them that decided to run in this provincial election against the New Blue after the fact. But the crowd was peaceful. And when we came back very quickly thereafter, Doug Ford didn't get the message. He doubled down, and he decided to test the market or test the waters first on a state of emergency before Trudeau even did it. So Doug Ford called a state of emergency provincially and was using a lot of the rhetoric that Justin used federally before Trudeau did it. And he put the state of emergency in. He used the powers under that to shut down 39 trucking businesses without due process. And he really gave Justin Trudeau political cover in Ontario for what followed 2 or 3 days later. But I would say this, what as quickly as Justin Trudeau brought in his state of emergency, Trudeau and Ford ran away from it just as quickly because of the grassroots feedback. And it was great to see some conservative politicians federally finally get around to saying something. And whether they're genuine about it or not, we'll let the voters decide, and we'll let those politicians decide. But better late than never. And it was good to see the pushback. And then when they introduced Bill 100 in the legislature in Ontario to make some of those measures in the state of emergency permanent, Belinda was the first MPP in the legislature to debate against Bill 100 at second reading. Her and 3 others voted against it at second reading, which again is an example of bringing awareness to this bill, because it wasn't getting a lot of coverage. There wasn't much debate about it. The establishment parties were all for it. It's a terrible bill. It strips away due process, and the government can just decide to file charges, shut down your business provincially. It passed into law because they passed it at third reading in the middle of the evening, which is a time when the legislature should not be sitting. But we raised awareness to it, and more Ontarians know about Bill 100 now, and we will keep advocating against it as part of our commitment to roll back and do a complete review of all the laws that Doug Ford and the PCs have put in place in the last 2 years in response to COVID-related lockdowns and mandates.
I want to pull up, let me just add to stream, and I'm going to change this one. I want to bring up an article on that bill. Tabarnouche, what is this? Bill 67. This is what I'm going to replace with here. Okay, delete. So Bill 100, what were the, offhand, specific issues? I remember some of the issues, which was blocking, you can have your license suspended, your car impounded for blocking, what do they call it in the law? For blocking trade routes? Allowing government
they use a more generic term than that, infrastructure, and the infrastructure could be changed at a later date by regulation. So it wasn't like they were locking down what the protected infrastructure would be, and there's so much wrong with the bill. For starters, a protest outside of Parliament Hill doesn't, in my eyes, count as protected transportation infrastructure. Second, the protest that was going on at the border in southwestern Ontario, they weren't blocking the entire bridge, and the protesters were cooperating with law enforcement. Third, law enforcement already have the powers, federally and provincially, if there actually was infrastructure being blocked. Fourth, it strips away all due process in this process, where you're no longer presumed innocent until proven guilty. They use the powers under the state of emergency to shut down 39 trucking businesses. And what the biggest issue, there's 2 big issues with this law that I think don't get a lot of discussion because it might be a little esoteric. Number one, at the bottom of the bill, or near the bottom of the bill, there's a line that says, "We will review the enforcement of this bill by police powers or agencies every year." You would know this. That's like the government admitting publicly that they're not really sure that they're on a good ground here constitutionally, that this bill would be used properly by anyone who enforces it, whether it's law enforcement or anyone else. So that's like they just throw up the white flag and they go, we don't even know if this is actually legal or constitutional. That's the first red flag. The second thing is that we have seen provincial and federal governments apply this type of legislation based on your political beliefs. So in 2020, when protesters were blocking trains from going forward, that was okay. And there's other infrastructure projects in Ontario that have ground to a halt regardless of court orders for years and years, and the government does nothing. They just leave the protesters. But if you are an opponent of Justin Trudeau's and his good buddy Doug Ford, they use powers like this to throw everything at you. And we just yesterday, one of the stories was the banks, one of the banks, Scotia Bank, apologized to BJ Dichter for freezing his account. And this is kind of the random powers that government wants, without the checks and balances, without the due process, to say we're just going to do whatever we want and we'll apply the law differently based on your political beliefs. And we'll ask questions later. Oh, we'll do a review next year. We'll see how Bill 100 worked out. By that point in time, the damage has been done to trucking businesses or others that were involved in the protest. And it's such expansive powers. Can you imagine if you have someone living in your house, whether a family member or not, who goes and participates in a protest in Ottawa for a day and comes back and your bank accounts are frozen because you're the property owner of someone who went there, and they say, well, here's Bill 100. We could just do it. No due process, no checks and balances.
I'm reading a Rumble rant over at Rumble, and someone says, after Sussmann and the new gun law announcement, it's nice to see anyone not throwing in the towel. And Jim, I think they're referencing you.
Thank you. Can't throw in the towel. There's many of us, many of us. I'm just lucky to be able to speak on behalf of New Blue Party members and candidates.
I have to block a sex bot, Jim. We have been infiltrated by bots in this chat. Okay, so that's Bill 100. We've done Bill 67. We've talked about the protest. The latest, Trudeau announcing the nationwide gun ban or what is it called? Freezing of handguns. My understanding, it's very not superficial, it's just new, is that what he's going to do is authorize municipalities to outright ban small firearms on their own and not go through the federal level on that. Are you familiar with what the plan is with this newly announced law?
I'm still catching up on the announcement because it's federal law and we're a provincial party. So we like to focus what we're saying on provincial laws and what the provincial parties are doing. But Doug Ford's contribution to Trudeau going after taxpayers, going after parents, going after the right to protest, going after businesses, and now going after gun owners is traditionally in politics, the Ontario quote unquote conservative leader, which the Doug Ford PCs are no longer conservative, but many still think that they're the conservative option. You could count on them to stand up to the federal Trudeau Liberals or other Liberal leaders in the past if they veered too far into the left or too authoritarian. And when Trudeau's got a guy like Doug Ford and the PCs, he's created a wing of the Liberal Party of Canada in Ontario. And he knows he's not going to get any political pushback from Doug Ford on anything, including this. He just gets to do whatever he wants. And in this scenario, he's going after gun owners, and they're going to keep pushing this going forward. The other part of it, though, that I believe is a lot of what he's announced is not new. And he's just repackaging it for political rhetoric, and he's trying to see how far he can get. So I will catch up with that federal legislation. It's something to keep our eye on because we've always respected and defended the rights of legal gun owners and the attacks from the left to blame them for all of the ills of society.
Yeah, the buyback and the 5 rounds per magazine, that I think is old. That I think he is rehashing old stuff. I think the new stuff is the outright freeze on small arms. And
he's going to just create a black market for this stuff.
He's going to make it bigger. The whole issue. I'll get to it when we're done with the interview. I'm going to get to some of the articles. The black market is the problem, not the lawfully procured firearms.
Yes.
Okay. And you say that Trudeau within the province has his own Liberal Party. I tell people that Ford is progressive conservative, and they say, "What the hell is that?" And I never even stopped to think about it for 1 second. What the hell is progressive conservative? Like,
if you think about it too hard, it won't. Forget it. And that's most of what the Ford PCs are doing. Like, he got elected on axing the carbon tax. He lifted it right out of my campaign. He got rid of cap and trade in Ontario. And then a few months later, he said, I'm going to bring that back, but I'm going to call it something else in regulation. He got rid of the green vehicle, the electric vehicle subsidies that Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty were doing. And then he brought it back bigger and better, hundreds of millions of dollars funding to industry to say, I'm going to create this industry and it's going to be entirely dependent on government funding. So it doesn't make any sense. It's something that's been passed down through generations and generations in our political system. And I believe it was probably like 100 years ago, there was a blue party from Lower Canada, and they merged with another party to create the Conservative Party. And somewhere along the way, someone said, let's take this conservative thing over and insert the name progressive. And it allows the PCs to say, look, conservatives in our name, but really we're progressive. And it's gotten so bad under the Ford PCs, under Doug Ford, and even before him with the prior leader, the PC Party of Ontario has made a decision, strategic in their mind, to become the wing provincially of the Justin Trudeau Liberal Party of Canada. They don't even pretend anymore. The most they pretend is they see the New Blue Party. They hope that we wouldn't get 124 candidates. They threw everything they could at us in subversive measures by saying others were going to start parties. We still got 124 candidates. So now they come out and they campaign without a platform, and they do a couple things. They say, you got to vote for us because the other guys are worse. Right, worse. Okay. They run ads and they use our rhetoric. They're using our rhetoric on ads, attacking the NDP and saying the NDP might bring back lockdowns like they did. And it's like they're projecting onto the NDP what they plan on doing after the election. And then they send out some teasers in their budget, like a tax cut for 6 months on gas. And then you've got to read the fine print that says only for 6 months, only for 6 months. So we have to keep pushing forward because they've made a decision to clamp down all democracy. You can't work from the inside. You can't run for a nomination in the PC party. You can't go to a convention of the PC party and fight for policy, elect someone to run the party as president, which is the guts of the party, or the executive. And now the way to influence it is from the outside, and that's the New Blue Party of Ontario, to keep them accountable and to do the following things: challenge the left, whether PC, Liberal, NDP, Green, balance the narrative so we have a discourse here that's balanced in Ontario politics, and change the course. And it takes time, though. I know people are desperate for help and desperate for change, but like you said, we're trying to still figure out how long ago Progressive and Conservative got in the same name of a political party, but they've been around for over 100 years. My grandmother didn't speak any English, but she knew what PC was, and she knew what Liberal was, and she knew what NDP was. And we just started the New Blue Party a year and a half ago. We really got going at full steam in the fall, and we've been able to accomplish more than we expected and surpass our expectations. But when you're fighting against a brand that's over 100 years old, it takes time. And there's no shortcut. There's no getting on the elevator, hitting, floor 25 and zipping up there in a couple of minutes. You got to take it step by step. But every step we take, we gain momentum. That's the difference.
Have you done any polling to see how you're faring, or which ridings you have a better chance of getting someone elected in?
The pollsters in Ontario are all partisans, and they all, I'm not giving our donor money to partisan hacks to tell me what I already know. And they would do a poll and they'd say, well, your party's new and not everybody knows about it. Well, thank you. I know that already. I don't need to give you thousands of dollars of our donor money, Mr. Pollster, for you to tell me that. What we have seen is some trends where increasingly we're the party that more and more Ontarians, more than the other parties, are looking into, whether it's online in other areas. We had a commitment and a conference to train our candidates to do a grassroots effort. And I reminded some of our local campaign team recently some studies that were done in the US on politics for decades. They've looked at what influences someone to change their vote and what impacts getting out the vote on election day. And they looked at TV ads, they looked at mailings, they looked at media coverage. And we've got a lot of disadvantages. We've got the fact that the establishment media won't put us on a debate, on a leaders debate, so that people can see who I am and who Belinda are, and more than the thousands of people who already know us. We've got over 10 million people in Ontario. And one of the things that has the best impact on changing people's minds and their habits, because voting PC or voting Liberal are a habit for many, many people for decades, is one-on-one conversations. And that means talking to 10 million people one-on-one. That takes time. And the Ford PCs are trying to get through this 30 days as quickly as possible. But we had our candidates commit to a grassroots strategy. Signs were being put up on day one of the campaign across Ontario, caught people's attention, and canvassing teams across Ontario. And our support was able to gain traction a lot quicker than any other party in their first election campaign. And I know whatever the result is on June 2nd, it's going to be historic, because I'm fairly confident that we will do better in our first election campaign than any other new party in a very, very long time in Ontario or across Canada.
Now, you know, polling, I think, is fundamentally flawed. Corrupt probably is the best word. But you can tell a lot from donations and donors. I don't know if I'm allowed asking the number, but how have your physical donation, like monetary donations, fared, and what indication has that given you of grassroots support for the party?
Well, we've been very fortunate since we announced to be supported by grassroots donors. The establishment parties, like the PCs, get $5.9 million a year in taxpayer money. It just goes to them. And we don't have that because they designed the law when they brought it back to say if you're a new party, you don't get any. So they've already, I guess they need the help. That's how much of a threat we are. They need to give themselves taxpayer money. I've been so busy leading the party, our CFO's on top of the dollar values, but we're able to afford lawn signs, generic New Blue Party of Ontario lawn signs that our party from a central standpoint had them ready to go on day one of the campaign. So right away when we got started, all of a sudden people were seeing New Blue Party of Ontario lawn signs across Ontario. And then our candidates were fundraising and getting their own lawn signs up and running throughout the 30 days. We were running radio ads in a lot of radio stations in all parts of Ontario, and that all helped to raise awareness. But I can't stress enough, we always need more support on the ground, but the one thing that we need, and we're very grateful to those who spend their hard-earned money and give their donations to the New Blue Party, and they get a tax credit at the end of the year. But the one thing is awareness. And when you start a new party and you're a year and a half out to get going and you're really full steam ahead in the fall, many people will not know about us, will not know there's an option. One of the biggest components of our supporters, or the largest number, are people who say they have stopped voting for years and they lost hope in the system. All the parties sound the same. No one was speaking towards their values and principles, or they were pretending, like the PCs. And we have a lot of supporters who've come out to volunteer. They're putting up signs across Ontario, and they say, I've never had a membership in a party. I haven't voted in years. And they're leading. They're leading as riding leaders. Some of them are running as candidates and putting in signs. And so our goal is to get 10 million people plus to know about the New Blue Party of Ontario through one-on-one conversations. And then they can make the decision, party's for me or the party is not. And look, we can't be, I've wanted to have this conversation with you for a very long time, actually. We can't, it's not true to say that we've done everything we can. It's not true. Like, changing your vote from what your dad or your grandparents voted in Ontario provincial politics is not like trying a new soda at the supermarket, where someone comes up with a new cola and you go in and you see it on the shelf and you say, I'm going to try this new cola. And if the cola tastes like terrible, you go, I'll go back to the other cola. A vote is someone trusting their vote into your party to say, I feel confident that you can run the government of Ontario and all the money that it has and all the levers of power that it has. And we have full confidence that we can do that. But Ontarians don't know who I am as well as you do, or as well as my wife does, or as well as our candidates and our party members do, because they're busy in between elections, taking their kids to school, raising their families, going to work, holding on to their jobs, looking for new jobs when the government forces them to lose their job. And they're not following the intricacies of party politics and who's this guy Jim and who's Belinda. So we can't get ahead of ourselves and say, oh yeah, we're going to start a party and in a year and a half, we're going to win a majority. That's not how it works. They blindly, a lot of people habitually vote PC or Liberal because even though they can't stand Doug Ford, even though they think he's a total flop, even though they may even think he's corrupt, they have this comfort or this idea that there are people they don't know behind the PCs that have competence and know what they're doing. If they only knew what I knew, that the people behind Doug Ford are not very competent and don't really know what they're doing, and all Ontarians had that awareness, we would be growing much faster. But it takes one-on-one votes, and we can't get ahead of ourselves and say that in 18 months we've done everything we can already do. It's not like buying soda. Voting for a new political party requires time, and we have to earn their trust. And we are not going to be the party that blames Ontarians for the result on June 2nd and says that they are ignorant or they don't know what's going on, especially when I see on Facebook, I see people who've been calling themselves freedom fighters for the last 2 years, or I see others who've been criticizing the Ford PCs for 2 years, and they've said, oh, I'm going to vote for the Ford PCs. And they are the exact same people who attack Ontarians for their views, and now they're going back to the person that betrayed them for the last 4 years and voting for him again one more time.
Okay, highlight their guy TV. Hi there, guys. TV says, Viva, he said tear down the windmills. Can you get him to clarify that? Sounds like a waste and a political show.
It's a great question. It's not. It's all driven on reducing electricity rates. The show is putting those things up in the first place. So the McGuinty Wynne Liberals created a banana republic out of our electricity grid in Ontario. They came up with this idea to put wind turbines up. 50 cents to 80 cents a kilowatt hour is what they were giving the developers of these wind turbines. It used to make up 5% of the electricity grid in Ontario. It's now grown to 10 or 13%. The Ford PCs came in, and for years, the PC party said they were against wind turbines, and they were going to do everything they could to take them down. Not only did they not take them down, they have the tallest wind turbines in Ontario's history that have gone up in Stormont, and I just made a stop there 2 days ago with our team. They went up in Stormont, 29 of these things, the tallest in Ontario's history. They look like the aliens landed. It's so terrible how they've destroyed the landscape across rural Ontario. But the real tragedy with these things is the fact that electricity rates in Ontario have tripled in 20 years, if not more. And the primary source for driving up the cost is the wind turbines. And we don't even use most of the wind electricity because it's produced in off-peak times. So we have to dump it because you can't store it. We dump it into neighboring jurisdictions for pennies on the dollar while we're paying the developers 50 to 80 cents to produce it. And sometimes the Ontario government pays neighboring jurisdictions to take the electricity, and we're overproducing electricity because the rest of the grid to make room for the wind turbines is underproducing from where it could. And so you could remove or decommission the wind turbines, bring down electricity rates, and you wouldn't even need to replace it in the short term. And you would save hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 10 to 20 years on electricity rates for every single Ontarian by just getting rid of these things and restore the beautiful landscape we have in rural Ontario. When Doug Ford took over as premier, there were 1 million manufacturing jobs in Ontario. We're down to 750,000. And for 20 years, the economy in Ontario has been puttering along at 1.25% of GDP growth. Terrible numbers. Our social services expenditures are rising at 6% plus. So we've got to conservatives used to say we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. With the Liberals and the PCs, we have both. And if we don't get our economy growing again, I fear drastic cuts that are going to come in the future. The only way to get the economy growing again is to get electricity rates down. And the only way to do that is get rid of the wind turbines as soon as possible. One more thing, David. They used to say in the PC party, you can't do that. If you take down the wind turbines, what happens to the message you're sending to the investment community? It's such a bad message. But when COVID hit, all of a sudden the legislature had the power to shut down mom and pop businesses, fire people, mandate. Oh yeah, no problem. There's no restrictions or limitations on the power for the Ontario legislature. If the Ontario legislature and governments have the power to shut down fish and chips businesses like I grew up in with my dad, or hair salons or other small businesses, then they have the power to end the wind turbine ripoff that has made our electricity grid a banana republic. And that's what the New Blue Party's core promise is for boosting and getting our economy back on track in Ontario.
Well, but setting aside the windmill issue, what do you do to boost energy or to reduce the costs? I mean, you have to produce it somewhere. So what are you going to be using to produce energy in Ontario?
The first thing is the existing grid outside of the wind turbines is not operating at near 100% capacity. It's down to 48% or something like that. So the rest of the grid has to start producing at what its capacity is. And then there are plenty of other options, whether it's bringing in electricity from neighboring jurisdictions or natural gas, or getting the nuclear plants to operate at a much higher effectiveness and capacity than they already have. But at the bottom, I was going to say at the bottom of this, shouldn't even be on the list are wind turbines. Like, they should be gone. The alien invasion should be over, and they should be out of here. And it would make the biggest impact to lowering electricity rates in Ontario and boosting our economy again.
People are commenting about birds in the chat. I've heard the rumors. Is it the case that wind turbines actually kill as many birds as people suggest they do?
I've read those reports, and I'm not the person best to that have studied it, but I've heard a lot about the environmental impacts. And just look at the monstrosity of the things. The amount of, talk about greenhouse gas emissions that the left likes to talk about. The amount of the manufacturing process that has to go in to building one of those things. It's so hypocritical to say that it's helping the environment. It's not. It's a total ripoff. And then we have other factors of how it destroys the landscape, wildlife in the area. But the one thing that's underreported or not spoken enough about, there's a gentleman, Parker Gallant, who writes a lot about it in the Financial Post and has his own website. And I rely on a lot of his research for years. But the one thing that's not spoken a lot about, especially with people in urban settings that don't see them, and they think, oh, it's okay, wind turbine far, far away from me, I don't have to see it. I mean, can you imagine if we just put all the wind turbines on Yonge Street? Just start downtown Yonge Street, go all the way up to North Toronto. There'd be a lot of pushback. But what's not spoken about is how these wind turbines are the primary cause of skyrocketing electricity rates for the last decade plus in Ontario.
No, they say, how do you think they're built? They have to clear land, trees, which
right.
No, I think what people tend to think is meant by the killing birds is that birds fly into them and then get crushed by the spinning wheels. The funny thing is, other people also don't necessarily appreciate. You got to manufacture them. You got to truck those turbines out to where they place them is in the boondocks. I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere, so you got to truck them out there. You got to clear the land. You got to clear the land to it. It's people think it's as green energy as Tesla's, as though the battery and the rare minerals don't have to get mined somewhere on Earth. Bill, Jim. Sorry, I don't know who Bill is.
Okay.
Jim, I've got to ask the question: how nervous are you for this coming Thursday? Are you sleeping at night? Can you sleep?
I'm sleeping good because we've achieved more than we could have expected in our first election campaign, and we know we're going to make history. But every single vote counts, and I want to make sure that people get out to vote on June 2nd. And we've got get out the vote efforts across Ontario, and we have people that support us may be deflated or may skip the vote because of a lot of what the establishment media has been saying about this election. It's already decided, it's perfunctory. We already know the conclusion, and we cannot allow that to happen because this is a long-term project for us. We have to keep building. I know that we're going to surpass expectations with 124 ridings where they're going to see New Blue. Some of these other politicos had these propositions for us to cancel half of our candidates at the last minute. Can you imagine if we went into our first election campaign and in half the ridings in Ontario there wasn't New Blue Party on the ballot? How much that would have stalled our growth and our ability to make an impact going forward. And so we had to explain to people why I don't cancel our candidates and why we have a long-term vision. But so now millions of people are going to go to the polls on Thursday and they're going to see New Blue, and many of them for the first time. And many of them are going to vote for the New Blue Party of Ontario. And it's going to be the first time in Ontario's history that a new party came up. And it's not the leading three or the Greens. And they had the New Blue on the ballot in every single riding. And they're going to cast a vote. And many of them are not going to vote for us because they're not going to be aware. But it's going to set the stage for June 3rd and going forward. And we're going to keep pushing forward. We're going to keep moving forward. And we're going to keep building because every step we take, we gain momentum. And we're very, very excited for the future. And we're going to keep the establishment parties accountable and their feet to the fire outside the legislature going forward on June 3rd, hopefully inside the legislature as well, because the best is yet to come.
Okay, this was the question I had before I forget. People are saying voting is rigged, yada, yada. Are you using electronic voting machines in the Ontario provincial elections?
So they've got Dominion voting machines, and they didn't tell us as a new party that they brought them in I think half the polls. They brought them in 2018 at a few polls. And it was, in fact, the Ford PCs who made a public letter to Elections Ontario about these machines. And then it quickly went away. And then we had the US election happen where concerns were raised. So we need scrutineers. So if you're in Ontario and you want to help, we need you to reach out on newblueontario.com to your candidate, to our candidate in your riding to sign up and scrutineer, because we need to make sure the numbers all add up, the number of people who are voting, because you can still see how many people are coming to vote and then the tally at the end, and it all has to balance. And we can access the ballots after the fact if we need in a close race. But I will say this, and you know this better than anyone, it's not the same as the US system, right? Because the US system has a lot of controversy for a variety of reasons. Number one, in every state and in many towns and municipalities, they create their own way of voting for the same election. And they change the mail-in process. They change what the ballot looks like. They have ballot harvesting where someone shows up, some Democrat shows up with 1,000 ballots and they are submitted. We don't have that in Ontario. There is mail-in ballots, but it's uniform process from Elections Ontario. The ballot's the same in every poll and every riding. The system is the same. The cutoff is the same, and there's no ballot harvesting where someone can't show up with more than one ballot. So we have to be diligent and keep track of what's going on, because in every election there's fraud. Like and no one would say otherwise unless they're just making it up. But it's important to minimize the fraud or minimize someone that's showing up to vote 2, 3, 4 times. And that's only been done through scrutineering.
Just so YouTube knows, we're talking about the Canadian election, because you can't use the F word in the context of American. Now, by the way, I actually didn't, I had heard and I just Googled it now, but I was not aware that in Ontario, you're using electronic and Dominion. In federally, it's paper ballot.
That's right.
We don't have that concern. Yeah, I can see people being a little skeptical now.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's many reasons why we shouldn't do what we're doing and we shouldn't vote. And if we do that and we don't vote, the establishment parties win. If we don't vote and our people stop, if we stop running candidates and we stop this advocacy and we stop talking about what's going on, the establishment parties win. They don't have to respond to the New Blue. They don't have to run away from their record on COVID for the last 2 years. They don't have to pretend they're bringing in tax cuts for a campaign. And so do not be discouraged by the reasons that by the things that are in the way to hold us back. Be encouraged by the fact that what we're doing is the right thing to do, and that we're going to keep doing it past June 3rd, and that more and more Ontarians that learn about the New Blue Party want to support us, and we will make a dent, and we will continue to have an impact. For crying out loud, Dave, I started the Axe to Carbon Tax campaign in 2017, and Pierre Poilievre is running for federal leader now. And the one thing he says every day is axe to carbon tax, axe to carbon tax. And the entire conservative establishment was trying to pretend that they had never heard of this axe to carbon tax campaign for 7 years. And so if that's not an indicator of how we change the rhetoric and we're forcing political parties to turn their positions and adapt and adopt what the grassroots are telling them, that is the best indicator. And Roman Baber's running for federal leader. He's talking about lobbyists. Boy, I wonder who started talking about lobbyists taking over political parties in Ontario and federal politics. It was me and Belinda. And we've had other politicians talking about internal party elections and how they're rigged in Ontario and in Canada. And so this will continue to change the narrative. And there's every excuse in the book to stop, including how terrible it is that they're using machines. I mean, we want to see the ballots and we want to count them, but we've got to keep moving forward.
All right, last question. I know people have been asking it. Two-part question. What's your take on the WHO treaty that's currently being discussed in Davos? And no one's going to find you or Belinda on the WEF website anytime soon?
They would never let me in. I just mentioned the Axe to Carbon Tax campaign, and those who followed us know our position on international treaties and that we're against international bodies setting policy for local governments, whether it's at the federal, municipal, or provincial level. And you know how they know that? Because I was the guy saying back in 2016 and 17, when Doug Ford and the PC Party and Patrick Brown and all the others said, oh, it's okay, Paris Accord. Yeah, we'll achieve the Paris Accord. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll sign up for that. I was the guy that was saying Canada should not be going around signing international agreements and then coming back and Trudeau telling provincial leaders and municipal leaders, I made this agreement and I want you to do everything you do municipally or provincially to achieve those obligations. That is backwards. That is upside down. It is about local government and it is about being accountable to taxpayers. So whether it's the Paris Accord, WEF, WHO, I am the longstanding guy that has been saying in provincial politics in Ontario and federal, policies should be set, whether it's on healthcare, whether it's on greenhouse gas emissions, on the views and being accountable to the people you represent and your own taxpayers. And we talked about it with the Paris Accord in 2017, put it on the map, and my views are the same. But the New Blue Party is a provincial party, and we focus on talking about what provincial and municipal politicians are doing in Ontario, whether it has the WEF label on it or the WHO label or not. Because a lot of the ideas come into Ontario politics and they might not tell you that they went to Davos. They might not tell you that they are reading what the international bodies are doing. But the ideas are very similar. So we call it out whether it says sponsored by Davos or not. And it's important that we don't lose focus and spend all our time talking about international treaties and not hold the feet to the fire of municipal, local politicians in Ontario and provincial politicians who are doing the exact same thing, but no one's talking about it because they're not being held accountable. There was one amazing, sorry, I know we're out of time, but
Don't worry.
In Waterloo Region, they passed this law and we missed it. They passed this law a year or two ago, banning political campaign signs from regional roads. Think about this for a minute. So if it's a sign that says stucco or get your driveway paved, that's okay. But a political campaign sign on a regional road, not allowed, supposedly. And the press asked us about this ban because some of our volunteers didn't know about the new law. And in the first few days of the campaign, put up signs. And then as soon as we got complaints, we had some vandals who thought they were the police going out there and taking down our signs. When give us a day, we'll go move it because we don't want to lose the signs. It's paid for by our donors, hard-earned money. So this is totally undemocratic. It's against grassroots campaigning, and it only helps the establishment parties because the fewer signs that the New Blue Party or an independent can put up, better for the PCs, the Liberals, and the NDP, right? Because we need the awareness. So I went and looked up court cases in Canada on bans. And the basic principle that the courts have said is you can't have an outright ban on political campaign signs. Municipalities can set rules on how and where and that kind of thing. And they're doing it on the premise of it's better for the environment not to campaign. It's kind of the same value and principle that I said earlier. The best way to get rid of voter fraud is just not have any elections. And they're doing it. So there's an example of an undemocratic, an attack to our democracy at the local level that's getting very, very little coverage, where they put in a law and they say that's the rule of law, when in fact, their law is illegal and totally unconstitutional. And we just haven't had the case where someone challenged it through the court system. So we've got to spend as much time talking about what's going on in our own backyards as we do what's going on in Davos.
All right. Amazing. Jim, someone said Behatzlacha, which is congratulations in Hebrew, Eyal Naman, but I guess congratulations for everything that's been done up to now. Everyone who's watching this, clip, snip, and share segments, tidbits. I'm going to try to post the entire interview on Viva Clips. If it's not this afternoon, by tomorrow, but clip and share so that people can see what's going on, Twitter, social media, etc. If you're in Ontario, get out and vote your conscience. Jim, Godspeed, best of luck. However you feel about politics, what you and Belinda have done in the last couple of years, nothing shy of monumental. So, man, good luck Thursday.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And we're sticking by our supporters because they've stuck behind us for the last few years, despite all the trials and tribulations. We're not going anywhere, and the best is yet to come.
Awesome, man. Oh, we'll follow up after the election anyhow on Thursday.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one. Now I'm going to take these headphones off just for a few minutes and let my ears breathe out. Awakened Alliance, I see your chats. I see them. I would ask you to stop spamming. I'm not sure what Ghislaine Maxwell footage you're talking about. I know we covered that trial in detail when it occurred and actually for years before it even went to trial. So I'm not sure what footage you're talking about, but we've seen the message. If I may politely ask, stop spamming, please. Let me bring up some super chats that I flagged starred. Apparently the jury had some questions in Johnny Depp. What does that mean? Who knows? Maybe there'll be a verdict this afternoon. That would be interesting. Ronald Reagan said the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." An old but classic statement. The Skywalk says Bill C-21 has the new flag laws. Okay, yeah, we dealt with that. As a family on the ODSP system, I was hoping that Mr. Karahalios could touch on what the new blue idea is for approximately 2.6 million that have a disability. That's 1 in 4 Ontarians. I am sorry we didn't get to that. James Jefferson, tweet him. I'm sure he is very responsive on the Twitter world, on the Twitterverse. Q Fragger says, Viva emigrated from the UK 20 years ago. I am so angry with our government. I feel I've made the biggest mistake of my life. I'm a gun owner and unvaxxed, and that makes you persona non grata under the current regime. NBPO go blue, hoping they get a few seats. Thank you to the Karahalios family and supporters. Too bad there's digital vote tabulation in Ontario. I don't know what VVV. Oh, that's your veteran's voice. Chris Semchuk. Yeah, I was surprised about that. I did not know it was digital electronic voting in Ontario, and certainly Dominion electronic voting. No further comment. Are there any banks that did not participate on the federal overreach by Scotiabank? None of the big 5. TD froze. TD froze 1.4 million for the Convoy. BMO, I know, were looking at accounts. So they were all the big 5. BMO, Scotia, TD. What are the other ones? BMO, Scotia, TD, CIBC. I mean, they're all in the club, and we ain't in it. Okay, sorry, I got to that. Hey, Muppet. Okay, I don't know what that means. My new blue candidate withdrew last minute. Why? Odd. I think Jim mentioned that. And then GB Kingdom. Still loving your work, David. Please consider following my progress on breaking the muscle up world record. It's only 32 reps right now. I don't know what muscle up is, but I'm going to go look at it now. Viva, do you put your pants on sitting down or standing up? Standing up. I don't think it's physically possible to put on pants sitting down. And we got Bahatzlacha. Thank you very much, Eyal Aman. 0.01 cents. That's what I'm left with. Say PC. I don't understand what's the joke about PC. Progressive conservative? Am I supposed to say the words? Or am I supposed to say PC as in it sounds like something dirty? Anyhow, that was fascinating, people. Clip, snip, and share. And there's not very much time left. If you're into New Blue, all that I know is I don't tell people who to vote for. I just rail against the corruption. Doug Ford authorizing his police to arrest. Oh, not arrest. I'm sorry. Just to, if you were out of your house after a curfew during COVID, authorize police to ask you if you had a good reason. You got a license for that evening walk? Ford is corrupt and deserves not to be in office. Period. And all of his minions as well deserve not to hold any power in office. I don't even know who the rest are in Ontario, but if they have the acronym NDP, I can guarantee you that they're going to be no better than the federal NDP. Alex Toledi says, it's mind-boggling how people will vote for the Ford government again this coming election when for 2 years they locked us down, decimated businesses, implemented vaccine passports and mandatory vaccines. And willy-nilly flip-flopping idiocy. People don't understand. They wanted to pass Bill 67, talking about institutionalized racism in the education system, when Doug Ford, by implementing lockdowns, disparately impacted minority communities. It was a known in California, known across the country, locking down communities disparately impacted the most vulnerable and ethnic minorities in Canada for the very reasons that locking people down in close proximity, in close living quarters, when people are multi-generational families living in the same unit, being locked down together, you exacerbate the problem for them. It's not the Justin Trudeau's with 2 homes, open air, multi-floor houses, who when they get locked down, they can go to their pool in the backyard and they can go watch watch movies on their home theater system that Supreme Leader François Legault had. When they lock down people, they are exacerbating the problem for the very minority and ethnic communities that they purport to protect through legislation that purports to find institutionalized racism in education systems. Well, lo and behold, the institutionalized racism might be coming from the very people complaining about it. Your last guest used PC as a way to escape. Dude, chat, help me out. What the hell's going on? I don't know what's going on. Okay, now hold on a second. I'm going to get a yerba mate. 2 seconds. Oh. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Oh, ow, ow, ow. Mate Libre. Not a sponsored video, but I certainly would endorse this product. Delicious. It has 50 milligrams of caffeine in it, which means I can have 2 of them in one afternoon and not have to worry about the jitters. Although caffeine and anxiety go hand in hand. So that's Jim Karahalios. Karahalios, yeah, I'm not screwing it up. Not Bill. I don't know where even Bill came from. Who just tuned in? What did you miss? You missed discovery in real time of Sussmann's acquittal. Dr. Theresa Tam spouting garbage. Yeah, I don't understand political culture. I know personal computer. I know politically correct. I know progressive conservative. Nothing. Mate Libre. Hold on. The endorsement that they might not want. It's delicious. And we have a 4-pack with different flavors. So I played a Mate Libre roulette. I just went in and grabbed the first one. I'm going to reach out to them. Okay. All right. So that's that. Jim Karahalios, New Blue Party, elections in Ontario, provincial, not federal. So don't mistake People's Party of Canada for being in the equation right now. This is Ontario provincial elections. Now, what else was there? Let me just go see. Can't believe that there are 500,000 people watching Verdict Watch on Law and Crime. I'm not jealous. I'm interested. Well, there's what's the okay, I'll see that. Viva, you could, I feel like Happy Gilmore. I sure can go for a 12-inch Subway footlong. Talk about a hole-in-one. There's a story that let's get back to I have my notes up. First of all, what time is it? It's 2:50 and I got to go pick up a kid in about an hour. Oh, let's address one thing. Pierre Poilievre addressing the controversy as to how he did not vote on yesterday's vote to end the discriminatory, speaking of institutionalized racism, unconstitutional, speaking of rule of law, unjustifiable, abusive restrictions that are still going on in Canada. Pierre Poilievre says a technical Maxime Bernier tweeted out yesterday, "Hey, Pierre, you're on the election path. You're the only one. You didn't vote on this bill where the other conservatives voted against." I said, there better be a damn good reason for this. Otherwise, it would confirm a lot of the suspicion that people might have, myself included, about the Conservative Party, at least the Conservative Party of Canada doesn't call themselves the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada. The Progressive Conservative Party, PCP, probably wouldn't be the best acronym. Progressive Conservative Party, PCP. Okay. Anyways, technical problem. To give Pierre the full benefit of the doubt, this is his explanation. Technical problem prevented vote on COVID mandates motion, Pierre Poilievre. Conservative leadership candidate Pierre Poilievre says a technical malfunction prevented him from voting for a conservative motion to end travel-related mandates. Members of Parliament voted Monday on a motion from Conservative MP Melissa Landsman to, quote, call on the government to immediately revert to pre-pandemic rules and service levels for travel. By the way, Canada has made its international reputation for a number of reasons, and one of which is continuing to have these unscientific, unconstitutional, inhumane, discriminatory policies in effect. You know who voted to maintain it? The People's Party, the fake People's Party, the NDP, the New Democratic Party, or the New Democrat Party, where the hell they want to go. They voted for this. Jagmeet Singh sits on Twitter all day long tweeting how terrible the Liberal Party is, how they've rigged the system, how they're corrupt, divisive, unethical, dangerous. He spends all day railing against the Liberals and the Conservatives on Twitter, and then goes ahead and votes with them. Guess what, Jagmeet Singh? You are just as bad, if not worse, than Justin Trudeau, because at least Justin Trudeau has owned what he's doing. The motion failed 201 to 112. These people represent Canadians. Independent MP Kevin Vuong and Liberal MP Joe Lightbound voted with the Conservatives. Joe Lightbound finally saw the light of day. I believe Joe Lightbound, however, voted for the invocation of the Emergencies Act. The remaining Liberals and all Bloc, NDP, and Green. All NDP. Shame. Shit. Do I have a bell? I need a bell. Shame. Shame. Why do I have a metal slinky? I hate the way these things smell. Shame and terrible. Okay, but let's just see the explanation. Yada yada yada. In a statement to True North, Poilievre says he did in fact attempt to vote for the motion remotely, but it wasn't logged. I attempted to vote for MP Melissa Landsman's motion ending all COVID travel restrictions. Pierre Poilievre said, I was voting remotely as I was in Thunder Bay, but the voting application did not register my vote as a result of a technical problem. I'll be raising a point of order to alert the speaker to the issue and asking for my vote to be properly counted as favoring the end of these rules. Fellow MPs and leadership candidates Leslyn Lewis and Scott Aitchison both remotely voted for Landsman's motion. The tally shows. Let me tell you one thing. I've said it publicly. I wouldn't vote Conservative even if Pierre Poilievre becomes the leader. I'm not a mean person. I hope Pierre Poilievre is telling the truth, because if he's lying, the aggregate knowledge of the internet is going to sniff it out, and it's going to be yet another stain on the Conservative Party. So I hope he's telling the truth. All right. So technical problem. True North. All right. Closing that down. Let me see what I got here. It was so disgusting watching Brandon honor those who died defending the Constitution while he is in the process of tearing it up. Okay, and then there was another. Eyal Naman says, how can I get merch shipped to Israel? Ani lo yodea. I don't even know how to say hard. I don't know. But if we go to the new merch platform, vivafry.com, everything is integrated there, and I've actually shut down Represent. Thank you for actually letting me remind her. Before this stream, I ended all campaigns on Represent. Everything is integrated in vivafry.com. I've seen some of the shipping. It's expensive. I mean, the shipping is expensive. And to Israel, my goodness, I don't know what that's going to cost. So, caché, that's right, caché meod. So yeah, I think it's going to be hard and expensive. I don't know, but yeah, thank you. Let me know if it actually works. Shipping to the States seems more reasonable. Shipping to Canada, I've seen is pretty expensive. And I don't know what it's going to be. Caché is hard. Mark Sidloy. Okay. Hebrew lesson of the day is over. There was more. There was more that we had on the menu. I want to get to the hold on. Let me see this. Cancel this. This just came up. Pierre Poilievre promised he would ignore the charter due to a court ruling he didn't like, just like Trudeau does. I don't know if that's true. I don't. Thank you for the super chat. I'm not sure that's true. Pierre has been good. Not as good as Roman Baber in terms of putting his money where his mouth is, literally. He's been good. I really hope he's not lying. I hope he's not. I hope he didn't actually forget because of his schedule and is making up a lie. Because I tell my kid, making a mistake is a problem. Lying about covering it up makes it exponentially worse. So I just hope that he's telling the truth. Okay. But listen to this. I wanted to bring up the Nova Scotia shooting, people. This is the shooting that Trudeau invoked as the basis for the Order in Council gun ban from a couple of years ago. But most people don't know the details. We know it was absolute horror, but we don't know the details. So this is an older article. This is from April 2020. The timeline. I just want to highlight some issues about the timeline. 10 o'clock p.m. is when this all starts. They discover bodies at 10:26 p.m. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 13 victims at 10 o'clock. A witness sees a vehicle believed to be the gunman leaving. That presumes that it's the fake RCMP truck. But I want to just, here we go. 11:32. Bear in mind what has occurred here, and I'm skipping the details. Are pure horror. 11:32. Nova Scotia RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, announced on Twitter they are responding to a firearms complaint in Portapique and asked people to avoid the area and lock their doors. No public alert or additional statement on Twitter for 8 hours. For 8 hours. This is the next morning after he's gone on more of a rampage. Then they at 8:54 in the morning, they release a photo. Consider this is now 11 hours. And more rampage. Then they say, they're describing what happened. I mean, I'm going to clip this because I don't think people know this. More tweeting that people should avoid. More tweeting, but not disclosing a very key fact. Police share publicly for the first time via Twitter that the gunman may be driving a vehicle that looks like an RCMP cruiser and wearing what appears to be an RCMP uniform. 12 hours and how many humans later? 12 hours. 12 hours. But never let a crisis go to waste. What does I was going to say Brandon, what does Brando do? It's Sam, it's beyond horror. But easy to ignore the. No, it's not even impotent. I don't even know if it's incompetent. Easy to ignore the obvious issue that exacerbated this situation, that allowed it to go on for 18 hours. And then you look at Uvalde, and they're talking about waiting outside for 45 to 90 minutes while this all continues to happen in front of the police, despite the wailing demands of parents. Yeah, no. An individual who has already killed 2 people, apparently got into a shootout for 12 minutes in front of the school, somehow got into the school, and then you have police outside on stand-down orders for 45 minutes to 90 minutes while the individual massacres people. No. Don't look into that. Don't look into that. This is like, I don't want the solution. I want my solution. And exploit it, politicize it, And that's, it's par for the course in politics. Here's the article, people, if you want to go read the timeline. Now Trudeau's banning small arms, frozen across the country, as though that's going to solve the problem. And spoiler alert, which we've talked about since the beginning, it won't, because that's not the problem. Lawfully procured small arms are not, my God, look at these ads, are not the problem. How do I see this article? Okay, I think we can see this now. From the Globe and Mail, Canada has a real gun violence problem, but it's mostly not the one the Liberals want to talk about. We go through this. It has become a tradition for the Trudeau government. Whenever a mass shooting occurs, it immediately announces more gun control measures. The Liberals did it again last week in the heightened emotional aftermath of the Texas shooting. And here we got to take a shot at the U.S. because here people just look at this and say, "Oh, it's done with a firearm. Firearms must be the problem." Not the fact that the police sat outside for 45 minutes to 90 minutes while they knew someone who had killed at least 2 people, barricaded himself in a room. No, that's maybe, police response, school safety. Those are not things that anyone needs to look at. They don't want a solution. They don't want the solution. They want their solution. But on the plus, hey, at least in Canada, we have a government that responds to mass shootings by talking about preventing more of them. Unlike the United States, where it is preordained that yet another slaughter of children will not change American gun laws. But anyhow, the bottom line, people, is that in Canada, the problem is black market small arms, illegally obtained small arms, and not stolen legal firearms. People who have a license for small arms, your weapon gets stolen. You're not criminally responsible. You will face criminal sanctions if you don't report it immediately. Serial number, when and where, so that police know to look out for it. The problem in the state, the problem is the black market for firearms, and that the majority of violence is small firearms in Canada. The majority of gun crime is small arms, and the majority of those small arms are illegally procured in the first place. Oh, let me just see if this article covered it. Yeah, it's not soft gun laws it's not soft sanctions for violent criminals. It's not soft sanctions for people in possession of illegal firearms. No, it's go after the only people who are not going to fight back, the law-abiding citizens, as though that's possibly going to do anything to resolve the actual problem. And people don't even know what you have to go through here to own a firearm legally. Anyhow, close that up. If you want to read that, it's not the best article on the subject. I don't want to shut myself out of the stream. I hope I didn't just do that. No, I didn't. I'm here. So that's it. What else do I have on the menu? A couple more things, and then we're going to verdict Johnny Watch. Oh, well, let's just go listen to Justin Trudeau talk about this. Look at this. Look at this.
We're introducing legislation to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada.
Way to increase the black market, Justin.
We're capping the market for handguns. As a further part of this
Look at
new
that,
legislation,
his smug
we're
face.
also fighting gun smuggling and trafficking by increasing maximum criminal penalties and providing more tools for law enforcement to investigate firearm crimes.
If that's the solution to the actual problem, Justin, because that is the actual problem, what is the first half intended to do? Are there statistics showing that gun violence is committed by legal gun owners? or by stolen lawful arms. Is there anything to indicate that? Burying the actual problem in the desired outcome is a form of deceit. To solve this problem, we're going to freeze on all handguns. And we're also going to actually go address the real problem. I'll say that quietly because I don't want anyone realizing that the first part of this is not actually going to address any problem. It's not going to resolve any problem.
And will require the permanent alteration of long gun magazines so they can never hold more than 5 rounds. These are actions that doctors, experts, and chiefs of police have been calling for years, and we're acting on their advice. I also want to thank the advocates, many of whom are here today, for your tireless efforts. I know that for too many of you, grief and loss are at the root of the work that you do. I want to recognize that, and on behalf of all Canadians, I want to thank you for your strength. Yes. We're introducing legislation.
Not doing it again. We're going to solve the problem, and in order to solve the actual problem, we're going to introduce measures that are not going to solve any problem because there's no problem to that, but it's going to certainly give us a lot more power. I mean, it's small arm ownership in Canada has already been, according to many, prohibitively difficult, almost criminalized in and of itself. To get one, license, background checks. If you have a spouse, you need to get authorization from your spouse. It has to get renewed. I think it's every 5 years or every 2 years. Oh yeah. But just to end on another one that's gonna you get flabbergasting stupidity.
And they showed me a X-ray. He said a 22 caliber bullet will lodge in a lung, and we could probably get it out, may be able to get it and save the life. A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea of these high caliber weapons there's simply no rational basis for it in terms of about self-protection, hunting. Remember, the Constitution, the Second Amendment, was never absolute. And they showed me
There are so many things wrong with that 40 seconds. I mean, it's 40 seconds of absolute rubbish. Let's start with number one. One bullet will just get lodged in your lung. Most likely if you get shot in the lung, doctors can just pull that out and save you. The other type, the 9mm, will blow your lung out of your body. I mean, that in and of itself is it's gibberish. It's gibberish. But let's just assume that there's some scientific fact or accuracy to that. Let's just assume that. In the end, Biden goes on to say, there's no justification for having that for self-defense. Well, I'm sorry. If the first half of what you described was that one is more effective than the other, then yeah. I mean, even by your own gibberish ideations of how ballistics works, even by your own first premise, there is a better excuse for that, specifically for self-defense. If one is far more effective than the other, that's exactly what you want in terms of self-defense, effective. So setting aside the fantastical gibberish that started off that statement, it's incompatible and illogical with the second half, which is no logical basis to have that for self-defense. That's already wrong. That's already wrong. Because if it is more effective, it's specifically more effective for self-defense. For hunting, yeah, I don't think you hunt with a 9mm, but I don't know. Those are so two things. Fantastical imagination gibberish for fact of the first half, which, even assuming that's true, incompatible with the reasoning of the second half, not necessary for self-defense. And the third part, the Second Amendment is not absolute. I don't know what shall not be infringed means, but that sounds pretty absolute. I mean, basically, the Second Amendment is not absolute in as much as no part of the Constitution is absolute. Okay. Freedom of speech, not absolute. True, because you can't use your freedom of speech to defame or to threaten or to harass. True. Your Second Amendment is not absolute in that you can't use it for unlawful means either. I guess that makes sense. But if the idea is that there's no standalone provision of the Constitution of the United States of America that is absolute, well, then you can just remove the First Amendment. Not establish legal limits or legal boundaries which are justified in that you can't use the First Amendment to defame, harass, threaten. Okay. You can't use the second to break the law either. But if the idea is that the provisions themselves are not absolute and you can just remove the First Amendment, well, I have no doubt that aspiring tyrants would love to think of inviolable basic human rights as not absolute. Lord knows Justin Trudeau believes it. Your right to leave your house after 8 o'clock, it's not absolute. Your right to travel across your country, even though it's in the charter, that's not absolute. Your right to not be subjected to unlawful detainment, it's not absolute. Off to the government designated quarantine facility you go. It's fantastical rubbish. Let me see. I got a bunch of texts. Let me see. 21 texts. What is going on? Okay. Viva, for instance, if you analyze the Second Amendment, grammatically it says a well-regulated militia shall not be infringed. But that is the conventional grenade for another day. Hold on. Let's just go fact check this. A well-regulated militia shall not be infringed. The text of the Second Amendment reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I'm going to go ahead and just, that's Washington Post. I am not sharing that crap. Second Amendment, Wexlaw text. Let me just make sure that it's here. Where is the actual text in Westlaw? It's not there. I'll just read it. Second Amendment, Constitution. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, capital A arms, shall not be infringed. That is the text. Confirmed, fact-checked in real time. I think that's pretty clear. That's pretty absolute. Not Ben. Biden said that back then you couldn't have a cannon. Or he said, the Second Amendment wasn't intended to allow you to own anything. You don't want citizens owning nuclear bombs and saying, well, it's a well-regulated militia. And he says, back in the day, you couldn't have a cannon. I think you could have a cannon back in the day. I specifically think the well-regulated militia and the right to bear arms shall not be infringed, provided for cannons. Pete Corn Pop, I'm not bringing that chat up. So you could own a warship. So yeah, but it's not absolute. In as much as constitutional rights are not absolute in that they don't allow you to break the law. Yeah, all of charter rights, all of the constitutional rights are not absolute. They don't allow you to use them in a manner to break the law. Yeah, but not absolute is in not absolute. Okay, there it is. There it is, people. Now you've seen it. Okay, well, look, there's no Johnny Depp verdict that I know of yet. Let's see. No, they're just replaying Johnny Depp on Law and Crime. And 468,000 people are watching it. All right, let me close this down. So I have gotten to all of my notes for the day, people, and it feels good to get back to the temporary basement studio. Enjoy your day, Viva. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you. And then I think I'm going to try to go biking after I pick up the kids. I'm going to go for a bike ride. I want to use my mountain bike. It's awesome. It's just so beautiful. Shall not be infringed means exactly what it says. Dude, are you Trudeau's brother? No, I'm not. So I noticed a bunch of things. 3D printout weapons, illegal. Unlicensed, illegal. People don't understand how serious the sanctions are for violating any firearms related law in Canada. It is intended to criminalize. It's intended to make you so scared of the sanction that ordinary sensible people are just going to not own a firearm. That's Terry Quinn says, thanks so much. Viva Fry, Viva Fry, Viva Fry, with a beautiful little rose and a red heart. Thank you. I see more Eyal Naman. In Israel, we have strike gun law. It did not prevent any gun violence. In Israel, I think you mean strict gun law. It did not prevent any gun violence. Well, and in Switzerland, you have a high rate of gun ownership, and you don't have that much gun crime. And in Mexico, you have some of the strictest gun laws anywhere, and you have some of the most gun crime. And in the United States, most people don't appreciate it. Mass shootings, the most psychologically traumatizing of these types of events of mass casualties, represent a fraction of gun homicides, because the majority of it, illegal, small arms, inner city, and people don't want to talk about it. I said it on the Dave Rubin show last week. The analogy is airplane crashes to car crashes. Exponentially fewer people are killed in plane crashes, but when it happens, it's traumatizing. It makes the news for days, weeks, months. But the reality, car crashes kill lots more people by a factor of 10. When it comes to these horrendous mass shootings, they're psychologically devastating in the scope of the destruction and the horror. If you're looking at gun violence as a subject, they represent a fraction of actual homicide, firearm-related homicides. And it's just, same politics. It's politically convenient to just go after law-abiding gun owners like they're doing in Canada, when you're going to do virtually nothing to resolve the actual problem, which is black market, illegally procured firearms. People committing crimes don't follow the law. It's definitional. So what's our schedule this week? Tomorrow, Dinesh D'Souza. It's going to be exclusive to Rumble. I'll start live on YouTube just to let everyone know to go over. Exclusive to Rumble, because we're talking about stuff and I want to have the discussion without having to worry about the YouTube Ministry of Truth. That's Thursday. That's Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday. Just go live during the day and see what there is to talk about. No gun law will stop criminals from getting guns. True. Obviously, especially since statistically we know. What I'm flabbergasted at now. We talked about it briefly Friday. The suicide. 54% now of firearm-related deaths, suicide. I remember back in the day when I first started looking into the subject, it was 1/4 to 1/3. Now it's over half. As of 2020 to the present, I wonder why. I've got a Trek Fuel. I had not bought a new mountain bike in 21 years. 2002. I've been riding a Specialized stump jumper. It's still the best bike I've ever gotten. Best cross-country bike ever. I have since given that one to my eldest, and I needed to get a new bike this season. Anyways, it's magnificent. So, TS, I'm not bringing this up to make fun of you, so don't accuse me for bringing up the comment and responding to it of trying to do anything other than actually. You bring up a good point. Why don't Canadians who don't like Canada move elsewhere? Canada immigration highest rate in 25 years. I got to find the article. People leaving Canada, highest rate 25 years. Because you're making a good point. I'm not going to be able to find the article. Canadians leaving Canada, highest rate. In fact, Canada immigration is the highest since 2016. You see this? This is better dwelling. There were 55,000 immigrants in 2021, up 191% from the year before, compared to the 5-year median. I want to make sure I get the right article. In fact, people leaving Canada is at the highest rate it's been at in 25 years, TS. So what you're saying is, in fact, borne out in the statistics. More Canadians are leaving Canada now than have. It's reached a high of the last 25 years. John Alessandri, I cannot answer that question. I want to get that article, but I can't find that article now. It's Parkinson's law of politics. Spend all day talking about something that is not the real. Spend all day talking about something that you can make an easy change to that won't necessarily solve the problem, but try to actually get into the nuanced detail and figure out a solution to the complex problem. Nobody wants to talk about it because it's too hard. And not a peep. There is this argument in the States. Hold on. It's going to drive me crazy if I can't get the article. I want to bring up that article. Canada just saw better dwelling. It's the same article. Now it's saying that people are leaving. Immigrants are leaving because of the high cost of living. Oh, son of a bee sting. I'm going to have to find it. I didn't have the article handy. People, Canada, gosh, leaving Canadians. Crazy. Canadians leaving Canada. Whatever. I won't be able to find it now. Can't find it. Darn it. Anyhow, I read an article that showed that it's at highest it's been in 25 years. Over 1 in 5 Canadians are considering leaving, better dwelling. Considering leaving, cost of living a major factor. Young immigrants from CTV News, March 25th, may leave Canada due to high cost of living. Record-breaking number of Ontarians choose to move out of the province. How lack of affordability could scare new immigrants into Canada. Canadians are leaving Canada in record numbers, and I don't know whose channel this is on. Offshore citizen. So TS, in fact, what you're saying is actually happening in real time. And what do you think happens when people leave? It's called the brain drain and the economics drain. What do you think happens? What do we think happens to a country after that? Is Barnes officially on vacation? You know what? He mentioned it. No, he's not on vacation because we're doing a Dinesh D'Souza sidebar tomorrow. Then he's on vacation. All right. So that is it. What time is it now? 2:47. It's that perfect amount of time where I don't have enough time to exercise before pickup. And who's got some questions in the chat? We'll take some questions in the chat. Not necessarily even super chats. Get some questions in there that I can answer that do not require dispensing legal or medical advice. Oh, here we go. Murph's Kicks on IG says, Dave, the Kicks are going through customs in Canada as we speak. Booyah. Yesterday, I got an amazing package in a Pampers box, and I actually thought it was something to do with babies. Nobody's pregnant, nothing like that. And it was all charter rights written on little slats of wood with a beautiful replica of a truck from the Convoy with little LED lights on it. My kid loved it. It was beautiful. Having any weapon for self-defense is illegal in Canada. Yeah, this is true. Not legal advice. This is true. Even pepper spray, even tasers, even a pocket knife if it's intended for self-defense, even a baseball bat if you're carrying it around for the purposes of self-defense. It's like they strip you of one right and then actually prevent you from being able to even defend yourself. Yeah, good job on the Rumble's exclusive. That is exactly how you get people away from algorithms. I want to have a free discussion. You know, we had to do it with Dr. Francis Christian. And we're going to have to do it with Dinesh D'Souza. And I think when we land, I think we're getting Dr. McCullough obviously is going to have to be exclusive to Rumble. Will this gun thing pass in Canada? Ultra MAGA? Yes, I think it will pass. Bearing in mind that a lot of these regulations, or a lot of these amendments, they get to pass by way of what's called an order in council. The law itself allows the government to amend the law through what is called order in council, just at the recommendation of I forget the name of the person who's nominated by the prime minister. And they say, make the change. We're going to issue it by way of effectively a decree. We don't debate it. We don't even have to pass it through legislation. Order in council, it's enacted. That's exactly what Trudeau did the last time with the last firearm ban in 2020. The one where, according to some, he actually banned airsoft guns and coffee. So yeah, it's going to pass. It's going to pass also because people here, this is a right that they don't care about. Most Canadians don't care about gun law or gun rights. They don't. It's not on their radar. So this doesn't affect them. Then most Canadians don't care about lockdowns because some of them, didn't have a business that got shut down. Some of them are getting, doing better off with $2,000 a month from the government until the cost of living goes up because of the printing of the cash. Then they start. But too many Canadians, when they don't have a problem with the right that is being usurped, don't say anything. But it's only a matter of time. Let's see this here. But you can carry a baseball bat in your car if you have a glove. So take that as you will. We've joked about that. TS says, Blake, I come here. And TS, I really wasn't intending to put you on blast or criticize, but people don't know. People are leaving Canada and it's going to have serious impacts. I come here because Dave is a sexy beast and I like to see him worked up. Well, I don't know if I would call myself a sexy beast or even sexy or a beast. Disarm the citizen. Okay, no, that's the argument, by the way. If you want to go to, let me pull up one article on Mexico. Google Mexico gun laws strict. Yeah, look at Los Angeles Times. Chrome tab. There's only one gun store in Mexico. So why is gun violence soaring? Civilians can acquire only a single handgun for personal protection, and those who want to buy rifles must prove they are members of shooting or hunting clubs. Reporting from Mexico City, the only gun shop in all of Mexico is behind a fortress-like wall of heavily armed, blah, yada, yada. Oh, my goodness. Anyhow, like the Second Amendment in the United States, Mexico's constitution guarantees the right to bear arms, but it also stipulates that federal law will determine the cases, conditions, requirements, and places of gun ownership. For many Mexicans, even those who love guns, the thought of an unfettered right to owning one is perplexing. Yet the issue, like so many, is each day, the Army gun store sells on average just 38 firearms to civilians, while an estimated 580 weapons are smuggled into Mexico from the United States. The paradox is increasingly relevant to Mexico's unprecedented level of gun violence, which have claimed more than 100,000 lives over the last decade. This is from 2018, people. This was from 2018. I saw it somewhere. I should really make... Oh, there, 2018, right here. 100,000 people in a decade. Last year, this is 2018. I don't know if things have gotten better or worse. Mexico's deadliest since the government began releasing homicide statistics in 1997. Anyhow, so, no, thank you. And you can also just look that up. Some of the strictest gun laws, some of the highest gun violence. So most people would be asking questions. How? Self-defense is illegal in Canada. Yep. Hold on. What does this say? Viva, why don't you have any golf-style tees in your merch store? Well, I'll look into it. I have not golfed in many years with children. It's just not possible. Okay, let's see what we got in the chat. From chat the other day, Viva Chia Pet merch needed. We can do that. Anyone remember the long gun registry and how that billion-dollar failure turned out? Next, they banned 22 caliber power hammers and people's deadly hands. Well, we still have the long gun registry in Quebec, even though it's no longer a federal requirement, but it seems to be coming back. Do I have a real job? Hold on. Yes, this. It's funny. People think, ADK, I'm not trying to make fun of you whatsoever. I've had this reflection before. People think a real job is something you have to dislike. Imagine, I don't think I'm an entertainer. I think I'm an analyst. I don't have paid gigs on any platform. So it's purely viewership, crowd support on YouTube, or support on locals. No, I did one sponsored video a while ago. I'm going to try to get more sponsored content. I just have a very stubborn, principled attitude. I cannot sponsor something that I do not believe in. But people think that, a real job means something you don't like, somewhere you have to go 8 hours a day, make money for someone else. This is my real job now. And I got to say, in as much as it causes a great deal of stress, the fear of going from red pill to black pill, the covering some of these insidious stories, in as much as the subject matter is sometimes distressing, this is the most fortunate thing that I could have ever stumbled across. This community and this thing that I'm doing, which has become sustainable and I hope value added to the world. I mean, more important than anything in the world is purpose and fulfillment. So, if people do things for money, they're not happy. People are lucky when they can make money doing what they love. And Ikigai. Okay, I brought that chat up already. Wait. No, I can't do. Dude, how many times I'll look into one of the VPNs? How many times I've been approached by those game things, by companies? I just look into. I can't do it. I can't sponsor something I would not use for myself or feel good recommending. What with the sex bots in the house? I want to block you. I don't want to bring you up. So there's that. Okay, Billy Keck, thank you. I love my real job. Look, I had a real job. I was a lawyer. I just never loved it. Good money too. I just never there was not one day that I loved it more than the day before. Thank you very much. Gina Walpole, we appreciate you, Viva. So that's it. Buy a horse. Thank you. Okay, we'll call it quits now. 3 hours. Wait, before we do that, is there any updates on the Johnny Depp? For Johnny Depp, has there been a verdict? My goodness, just consider this a verdict watch. I'm just not chattering about the trial any more than we already have. Verdict is in. Oh, that was Sussmann. Oh my gosh. Acquitted. Sussmann was acquitted, not proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Ikigai, that's right. Okay, we're going to end on this. I mentioned it a few times. Everyone must be familiar with the principle of Ikigai. What you're good at, what the world needs, what you can make money doing, and what makes you happy. When all four of those circles overlap, the center part where all four of those circles overlap is called your Ikigai, your purpose for being. And there's stresses with this. Some stresses, it can evaporate overnight. Other stresses, the struggle to retain relevance in a way that does not become exploitive, cheap, pandering, or shockutronistic. Like there's creators out there who feel compelled to push the limits, remain edgy, all this stuff, just because what you think you have to do in order to retain that spotlight of relevance. I'm going to try to always retain it on the basis of value added, insight, and ultimately good message. I would, again, here we go. I got an article. We're doing this. We are breaking down the Ikigai, the most beautiful concept. It is a Japanese concept. Purpose for being. Ikigai. Viva Fry struggles to find where he just brought up this article. Ikigai's right here, people. What you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, what you're good at. And it's beautiful. And I even love the overlapping other part. What you love and what you're good at is passion. But if you can't make a living off your passion, maybe you'll be fulfilled with your passion, but you won't be remunerated with your passion. What you love and what the world needs. You might not be good at it. And in which case, if you're not good at it, it might be your mission, but you're not good at what you love and what the world needs. What the world needs and what you get paid for, your vocation. That's what most people would think is your job. What the world needs, doctors, lawyers. What you can get paid for, doctors, lawyers. What you're good at, oh, I'm sorry, the profession's right there. I think I did this before. What's the difference between vocation and profession? And yeah, you see how it works. Right in the middle. If I could get paid for being a fisherman, I think for a while that could be an Ikigai, but I think at a given point in time, I would get bored with the lack of purpose from my Ikigai. I think you need purpose, and I think you would get bored of something like fishing, which I don't think it's got distracting entertainment and a good pastime, but not a meaningful existence in my respectful opinion. Although there are people out there, if they can find meaning in teaching, they find meaning in exploring. Blacktip H, I'm going to try to meet them one day in Florida, but Blacktip H, best fishing channel out there. I'm sure they've met their Ikigai. Lisa M. Viva Frysters. Viva Fry. Fry, you are the greatest Canadian humanitarian or Canadian flag. Happy belated birthday. Thank you very much, Lisa M. And time on Rumble tomorrow is going to be 7 o'clock in the evening. So Sussmann verdict shows the swamp will continue. Shed some sunlight on that swamp, and eventually it'll dry out. Okay, with that said, people, go enjoy the rest of the day. I'll be following. If Johnny Depp has a verdict this afternoon, maybe I'll go live, but we had a good one today. So tune in tomorrow. There will probably be a stream during the day. Definitely Dinesh D'Souza, Rumble exclusive tomorrow night on Rumble. Thank you all for everything. Clip, snip, and share the interview with Jim Karahalios. Send it around. If you're in Ontario, get out and vote. Do not give in to the system. What Barnes says, the greatest trick the devil played was convincing. He says it better. You know what I'm saying? The thing with the thing.